to Turner. The rainbow is worth 3.
Jonathan Taylor having a monster game.
Joseph Newgarden takes him down to the white line. They battle for the lead at 3.
Richardson on a design run. Touchdown! I-N-D-Y.
This is the Fan Morning Show with KB, JB, and Jeff.
Tempers flaring inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse last night, and speaking of flaring, I guess the right calf of Tyrese Haliburton flaring up a little bit, and that is a huge storyline as we sit here on this Wednesday morning. It's Tuesdays usually with Rick Carlisle. Today it'll be a Wednesday, 8 o'clock. He will join us. I'm Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, and Mark Dykton alongside. Jeff Rickard's still under the weather. Hopefully he'll be back tomorrow. And it was quite the night, James, inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. The Fever do take care of business against Connecticut Sun, but that is a game that will probably be remembered a little bit more for the post-whistle antics on more than one occasion from Sun and Fever players.
Certainly, I hadn't seen the Fever play in person in a while. It's like, hey, let's stop by the game, see what's going on. And then Caitlin Clark gets flagrant fouled by J.C. Sheldon in the third quarter, and I was thinking, oh, I have to work. And then to cap things off, Sophie Cunningham basically tackles J.C. Sheldon at the end of the game, and I was like, oh, I really have to work. And so that was, a lot of the extracurriculars. I thought that to both teams' points after the game when they were saying the officials didn't control the game, that was very clear from the start because J.C. Sheldon and Caitlin Clark were kind of into it early. I thought that both of them probably should have got a technical foul early in the second quarter when they kind of came face-to-face, because they said some words. Caitlin kind of pushed J.C. Sheldon to the side. J.C. got in her face, but obviously it led to Caitlin being poked in the eye. She pushes J.C. Sheldon in the third quarter. After she gets poked in the eye, Marina Mabry comes over and body checks her to the floor. She stays in the game somehow.
The Edmonton Oilers could have used Marina Mabry last
They
night.
could have, but I was also thinking, man, the Colts could use they have right guard questions, they have center questions, linebacker questions as well. So yeah, it was a very just weird game because the Fever crushed them, but that, like you said, Kevin, was not the takeaway at all. And honestly, when I had to write my post-game story, my part was all about the extracurriculars.
Yeah, I would say it's the most pissed I've seen Stephanie White in a post-game press conference. We will play that audio here upcoming in a little bit. And I thought probably the most frustrated I've seen Caitlin Clark. She's a very emotional player.
Yes.
She wears that on her sleeves. I thought she was pretty demonstrative on the court late and celebrating a late 3.
Yeah.
And whether she wants to admit it or not, I think there was a little bit more there than just, hey, I hadn't made a shot in a while.
She did the Kirk Cousins. You like that?
Yeah.
I saw the replay back, and I was like, oh, she is talking to that bench.
And then post-game, for those that have ever seen the old Bob Knight game face press conference video, the body language of Caitlin Clark told you everything you needed to know.
Yeah. She didn't take any questions on the ejections or
all you need to do is watch her.
But it was so – like, I was talking to Chloe Peterson and others who cover the Fever full-time, and it was just funny for all of us to – hear her say, like, okay, I'm not really answering those types of questions. Well, she didn't say that, but Stephanie White stepped in and said, hey, I'll answer all the official stuff. But you could just tell how she felt because every single time Stephanie White says anything about the officials, she nodded her head, like, very vehemently saying, yeah, I agree. And it was to one point, Tony East, shout out to my brother over there covering the Fever as well, and he asked Stephanie White to clarify, hey, when you say the official needs to do a better job of, like, controlling the game, what do you mean by that? And Caitlin, the only thing she said about the officiating, she just couldn't help herself. She jumps in, and Stephanie White is talking as well, and she's like, call foul! And I'm like, oh, okay, now I see how you really feel. And so Stephanie White did not hold back, though. I believe one of the last quotes she gave about the officiating was, everyone in the WNBA is getting better except for the officials.
Yeah, she'll be having something, I think, in the old mailbox here upcoming later this week. And we'll see if Herb Simon and company can take care of that.
But to give her credit, she did say this was not just a Fever issue. She feels like it's a league-wide issue.
Which, again, Caitlin hasn't played in, 3 weeks? Or, so for a while there. Obviously, it's not just a Caitlin Clark thing. Certainly the big news item today, though, will be the health of Tyrese Haliburton. We mentioned yesterday the line for this game coming up tomorrow night was sitting there at 5, a little bit lower than it has been for home games for the Pacers. It climbed throughout the day to 6.5. The report from Shams Charania of ESPN is that the belief is Tyrese Haliburton has suffered a strained right calf. he is headed for an MRI. Within that report, Shams mentioned if this was a regular season or even a round one game, he thinks there would be some serious doubt about Tyrese Haliburton playing. So we will await the update on that. The Pacers do practice later today. Rick Carlisle is going to join us here coming up at 8 a.m. And my just general thought, James, on this, it is one thing to be less than 100% or compromised.
Yeah.
It's another thing to be less than 100% or compromised against this defense. I've got questions about Tyrese Haliburton at 100% against the Thunder. If you tell me he's 75 or 80, oh boy.
I completely agree with that assessment, but I also think about this, Kevin, and Mark, feel free to chime in, but man, we both have, all of us have been around the league long enough, and I mean, even recently, when you hear calf and strain, that does not bode well for the future. And I'm thinking, do you have to kind of, especially getting the results of the MRI will help a lot, but if this is a significant strain, you have to think about Tyrese's long-term future. You don't want him going out there playing on a bad calf, which we know we've seen in the past. I'm not saying this is Tyrese, but in the past we have seen Kevin Durant try to do that in the finals, tore his Achilles. We saw Damian Lillard do that, come back from the blood clots. He had Achilles tightness and things like that throughout this season. He tore his Achilles, and so I just wonder if that is something they have to think about a lot, because as much as you want to play in Game 6 of the NBA Finals, you may never get to this opportunity again. Do you want to risk potentially tearing something and missing an entire season because of it?
Yeah, it was kind of a throwaway line late in the show when we brought it up, when we talked about, oh boy, I hate to go here, but I can't ignore it. And again, maybe the Jason Tatum one's a little bit fresher. Now, granted, he didn't have the calf issue in that Knicks series.
Up to it, really, yeah.
Now, age-wise, he falls a little bit more into the age category of Haliburton versus, even Durant in 2019 was a little bit older, and Lillard, but we haven't had this, guys. We haven't had the injury question. We are 21 games into the postseason.
Yeah.
And let's play this out. Benedict Mathurin has missed, one playoff game? And Jarris Walker, your 10th man?
Yeah.
Your ninth guy has missed a few. This is the first real injury question we have had. And obviously it is to the most important player in the most important game of the season. So we'll await that upcoming here today. Mark Dykton, good morning to you.
Good morning. I mean, are you going to be surprised at any point when the offseason does get here if they're like, yeah, he's going to get surgery on something or whatever? It seems like it's been lingering a while.
Well,
he's had some kind of issue.
I'd say this too, Mark. A lot of leg issues.
Yes.
Think about it. It was the ankle earlier in the series. Now he played through that. Now it's the calf. You go back to, really the start of the season. It was, okay, what happened in the Olympics? He did what? It was a groin. It was a hamstring. What was that? So I think when you start to add all this up, you can't totally ignore the big picture. And I get it. I mean, if you win tomorrow night, you set up the biggest game in franchise history. I mean, trust me, I can't ignore any of that. But at the same time, it's probably mostly PTSD. But could you imagine if he suffered something serious tomorrow night?
Oh, seriously.
And that costs you. I mean, we have in the last few weeks, Zach Edey suffers an injury, Darius Garland suffers an injury, and now they're out for the start of next season. It's just things that I don't think it's at least conversations that I assume Rick Carlisle and that medical staff and Kevin Pritchard and company have to be having.
Mark, my take on it is, I don't know, and I mean, obviously, if you hear, oh, wow, this guy had to have surgery, that would be very concerning. But I think a lot of it has to do with he's played so much basketball in the last year plus. It reminds me of how Caitlin Clark was when she first left college. And it was like, all right, you made it to the Final Four. Now you're going to go play in the season. And she got that break for the Olympics, which was great. But she played so much basketball in one calendar year. Whereas Tyrese, you went on a deep playoff run last year. You leave that, you go to the Olympics, you kind of retweak some stuff there, you finish up the Olympics, then training camp's right around the corner. So he's been playing basketball for almost, a year and a half, 2 years straight. Where I think, after the season ends, he probably needs to just, go find a beach somewhere and do nothing for a month and a half.
And the year before that, correct me if I'm wrong, he was in Thailand, right, with Team USA.
Exactly. So he's been playing and playing and playing, and so he does probably need a break. And as some listeners are putting in our YouTube chat, shout out to Neil. Neil is saying he probably needs to be shut down. I don't necessarily blame you, especially if the MRI comes back and confirms, hey, this guy has a significant calf strain. To your point, Kevin, you probably can't even play or succeed against this team if you're compromised. And then two, again, big picture, you're the franchise player. You got to protect the franchise player.
And then the trickle-down effect would be, okay, Andrew Nemhard, everything that's on his plate from a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander standpoint, now you're throwing the lead guard duties onto that and the massive amounts of playmaking that Tyrese Haliburton's tasked with. And, of course, if Haliburton's not playing now, Lou Dort's guarding you, or,
Yeah,
that
but this is also
aspect.
where, in a way, if you're a Pacers fan or your Pacers staff, you're like, man, we wish we had Jarris Walker, because at least you could throw him at SGA and say, hey, you got 6 fouls, you got some length, you got, enough, weight to kind of, hopefully keep him off balance or give him some trouble, but you don't have that resource. And so, yeah, to your point, Kevin, that changes the math a lot.
Like, would you move Neesmith on him? Would you, there's
because
a lot.
Nemhard is my lead guard. I can't have you trying to run my point and also check SGA. I mean, you'll be exhausted by the end of the first half.
Last year in that Celtics series, it was Nemhard lead guard duty, Shepherd into the starting lineup. It was not TJ McConnell into the starting lineup. So all conversations we have not had in quite a while in regards to the Pacers, but we have them here on this Wednesday morning. So plenty to get to. The Pacers did make a trade yesterday. As wild as that sounds, we are 1 week away from the NBA draft. We'll hit on that. Guys, I must say, a little bit of pang watching last night. Watching the Florida Panthers getting it done on their home ice, I thought what tomorrow night could have been. Just that moment, even having the game on the home venue. And I'm trying to think, Mark, did they clinch on home ice last year? Or was it up in Edmonton?
I don't remember.
I can't remember. I did feel very bad for Connor McDavid because I'm like, brother, what haven't you done in your career besides win this thing? It's so hard.
Boy, the toughness of that. I feel like Sophie Cunningham might be a Kachuk brother with how, tough those,
I'm not going to lie.
are.
When she did that, I was like, oh, girl.
She wanted to rip J.C. Shelton's head off.
Yes.
J.C. Shelton, Caitlin Clark, bad blood going back to college, Ohio State, Iowa, or am I making too much of that?
No. I guess they've had that tension for years now. And to J.C. Shelton's credit, she does defend Caitlin Clark, I believe, pretty well. I mean, Caitlin's a star, and she's going to get hers, but forced her to have a couple turnovers yesterday, got up in her grill. She's an irritant, and she's going to annoy you. And I thought that she didn't back down. And to me, that was, fine competitive spirit. I will say, I don't think that she intentionally poked Caitlin Clark in the eye. I feel like we're having deja vu last year with Dejanay Carrington poking Caitlin in the eye, and everyone's like, oh, my gosh, she did it on purpose. Like, do you know how much aim and precision you have to poke somebody in the eye? I thought it was kind of reckless what she did, kind of swiping her arm down across Caitlin's face and in her airspace. But to say that was on purpose, I'm like, no. My thing, again, as I was telling Kevin, we were coming up on the elevator today, I just could not believe that Marina Mabry stayed in the game. Like,
yeah, she should have been tossed right away.
And then the official pool report from the lead official, the crew chief, Ashley Gloss, she said that it did not rise to the level of flagrant 2, and she didn't even explain really why it didn't rise to the level of flagrant 2. So to me, it was that was the biggest thing, because on that play, Tina Charles got a technical foul for running over in Scalen's face, and Marina Mabry got a technical foul for body checking her to the floor. And so in my mind, I'm like, how are those two things equal? One player didn't touch anybody, and the other one very clearly ran the other one over. So, I think she should have been ejected, but she was not. Very weird decision.
You will hear why Stephanie White was so angry, and I thought probably the most outspoken, maybe more body language, honestly, than anything, Caitlin Clark, post-game as well. Rick Carlisle coming up in 45. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dykton on a Wednesday.
107.5 The Fan.
Pacers back on the hardwood later today. Practice coming up early this afternoon. Rick Carlisle will join us in 40. James Boyd, a non-Tyrese Haliburton calf storyline for you? Or are we just all the eggs in that basket here on this Wednesday morning?
I think that's certainly the biggest storyline. But another one to me would be, can you somehow perhaps defend Jalen Williams a little bit differently than you have in the last few games? He kind of got going downhill. And so do you switch up your coverages to make sure that he doesn't get so many straight line drops to the basket?
Again, coming up at 8 o'clock, it will be Rick Carlisle. The line has climbed to 6.5. Game 6 tomorrow, 8:30. And we'll await the update on the potential strained right calf for one Tyrese Haliburton. Last night inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse, tempers flare. The Fever really were in full control after the first quarter, basketball-wise, 88-71. I thought Natasha Howard in particular was just an absolute menace on the offensive glass. Caitlin Clark was Caitlin Clark for the most part. Kelsey Mitchell provided her scoring punch, but Stephanie White was not happy post-game at all with how the officiating was not only handled for her game last night, but I would say league-wide as well. Here was Stephanie White's opening statement last night.
There wasn't an explanation for the tech that she got. You know, I think it was pretty obvious that stuff was brewing, right? When the officials don't get control of the ball game, when they allow that stuff to happen, and it's been happening all season long. All season long. It's not just this game. It's been happening all season long. This is what happens, right? This is what happens. You've got competitive women who are the best in the world at what they do, right? And when you allow them to play physical and you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete. And they're going to have their teammates' backs. It's exactly what you expect, right, out of fierce competition. So I started talking to the officials in the first quarter, and we knew this was going to happen. You could tell it was going to happen. So they got to get control of it. They got to be better. They got to be better.
Yeah, obviously she will be getting a fine in the mail. I don't know if they send it by pigeon carrier or how that goes, but she will be paying some bucks for those comments. But this is not a feeling that Stephanie White has had solely by herself. There have been several players and coaches throughout the league, especially this season, speaking out and saying, hey, we need to be better when it comes to how the game is officiated to protect our players and, you know, our product. So I thought that what you said was probably felt by many players, and obviously anytime it involves Caitlin Clark, there's an added layer of scrutiny involved with it.
The cost of stamps these days, pigeon carrying might be the way to go for fines.
It might be.
That is a very good point. It was, again, 88-71. The Fever have clinched a spot in the Commissioner's Cup. This is kind of like the WNBA's version of the in-season tournament. That title game will be in a couple weeks. It is a $500,000 player pool up for grabs there. Caitlin Clark did let out, I thought, probably one of the more emotional scream and celebrations that I've seen here with her and the Fever. Late in the game, she hits a three, and Marina Mabry, easy for me to say, was on the bench. She's the one that pushed Caitlin to the ground earlier in the game. I have a feeling that scream was maybe directed towards her on the Connecticut Sun bench. And then she did the T.J. McConnell thing. You know, where T.J. McConnell kind of prances around the court, wants the crowd to get a little bit louder. Caitlin, very demonstrative with that. So clearly emotions were running high last night. And again, the Sophie Cunningham borderline tackle of J.C. Shelton looked like Zaire Franklin, you know, filling an A-gap.
Yeah, I mean, that was peak Caitlin pettiness. And for those who think that she's this innocent player, now, I'm not saying she should be poked in the eye or flagrant foul, but she is not someone who, like, goes out there and doesn't talk. She talks a lot of trash. I mean, even earlier in the game, there's a clip that you can see where J.C. Sheldon said something to her, like, you can't do that. And she looks at J.C. Sheldon and says, I can do whatever the F I want. And I was like, I bet you can when you're playing at that level. So she certainly talks and chirps, and she did not hold back after making that three, who, by the way, left this part out, Kevin. It was over J.C. Sheldon. Mm-hmm. So, again, the full circle moment there. And I did ask her, I said, hey, when you're getting hyped up after a shot like that, because one of the assistants, Karina Christmas, had to come over and tell her, like
please just go to the bench.
Yes, can you, like, can you basically stay within yourself? And she stood out of the game, but she was telling us how she loves to hype up the crowd and get involved. And I'm like, yeah, that, but also you like being petty too, which I respect.
Indeed, she does. 3-game road trip upcoming now out west, so you will not have Fever players in the building coming up Game 6 tomorrow night. Speaking of a Game 6, Lord Stanley was decided in Game 6. It was the Florida Panthers on home ice. They won Game 7 on home ice. Thank you, Brett Rump from Fort Wayne, for that tidbit. A 5-1 last night, second straight cup there for the Panthers, and we continue to have the drought for the Canadian teams. 1993, the last time a Canadian team has lifted
That's
Lord
so wild
Stanley.
to me.
4-2 in that series. Brendan King running naked in the Butler fraternity right now in celebration of that.
Florida did win on home ice last year too.
Yes. Yeah.
So there you go.
Question. So what's a weirder streak, not having a Stanley Cup for that long for a Canadian team, or the Jaguars not winning, or the Colts not winning in Jacksonville?
Boy, it's a great question. I don't know. I mean, how many Canadian teams are there? 5, 6? I feel like
saying.
that's the weirder streak.
Right, because I'm
And
like,
it's hockey.
Right,
Like
that's like their
they're not
national
supposed to
sport.
win hockey in Florida.
Right.
Well, and especially this year too. Like most of the Canadian teams are some of the best teams in the league, and
Right.
it's like none of them.
Major
Edmonton.
League Baseball-wise, Reds 6-5 over the Twins, Guardians over the Giants, Cardinals all over the White Sox, Marks Cubs get it done over the Brewers, the Indianapolis Indians 7-2 over Columbus. And speaking of baseball, it's a late calendar year wrapping up for the IHSA. Fingers crossed, Mother Nature cooperates for the boys golf state finals at Prairie View here. Day 2 getting underway, but the baseball state finals, you've got Couts and Lutheran, the Class A game coming up on Friday. Nothing says baseball powers in this state like Andrean and Jasper in the 3A game on Friday. Saturday, Boone Grove and Mater Dei. And 4A, we go out of the local area. It is Valpo and Evansville North over there at Victory Field to round out the IHSAA calendar season. Coming up on the other side, what is the latest on Tyrese Haliburton? What are the keys to Game 6? We'll hit on all of it. Rick Carlisle joins us at 8.
Previously on the Fan Morning Show.
Jay's been hanging in there a little while. Let's get to him.
What I questioned last night is Tony Bradley getting Thomas Bryant's minutes. Tony Hubba Bubba Bradley wearing a sock to the knee and then the other sock to the ankle. It looks like he's ready to go fishing in Mayberry.
There's liable to be trouble out there today. We're liable to have folks among us who are here for more than just a good time, if you know what I mean.
But I still think Thomas Bryant is a much better player than Hubba Bubba Bradley.
That was excellent there from Jay. Yeah, James Ward peeing down his leg there. Man, if Tony Bradley gets in the game Thursday night, I'm going to be sitting up there in section wherever 224 thinking, man, those socks.
Hubba Bubba Bradley.
Fishing in Mayberry is where Uncle Jay went with us.
Now, the minute it looks like there's gonna be trouble, we got to nip it! Nip it in the bud!
Andy Griffith reference?
Sure. What's my boy's name in Friday Night Lights 42 when Booby gets hurt?
I can't remember. I'm sorry.
Waterbug, is that what Booby calls him? It's Waterbug running versus Booby running. And I'm talking healthy Booby. I'm not talking post-injury Booby.
You're talking about I can't play. I'm going to play. I'm ready to play.
What I want is for you
My
to be able
team needs me. I'm ready to play.
I mean, hell, if you want to sum it up, the Pacers look like post-injury Booby. We got 7 Boobies and 2 Hubba Bubbas in this segment. You can't tell me we're not clicking today.
Boy, I ain't never heard such disdain for a pair of socks in my life.
9 o'clock hour, a little off the rails yesterday, Mark Titan. I believe Jay was on hold for an hour to get a couple Hubba Bubbas in there. Cannot wait to see Tony Bradley get some clock tomorrow night.
I said this off air too. I said his points didn't change. He said that exact same thing when he called the first time. So he held on to that exact same thought for over an hour.
Oh my gosh, you told me that, I laughed.
When you've got a great thought, why are you going to deviate?
Like, man, that is some commitment to the pettiness.
And I stand by my Friday Night Lights analogy. Chris Comer, right? Waterbug, that is the running back that got in over Booby. Yeah, Comer right now is the Pacers offense. 2 lateral, and healthy Booby is getting downhill, and the Pacers are not doing that, and we'll see exactly what the point guard situation is going to look like coming up tomorrow night. Again, Rick Carlisle going to join us here in 25. The report yesterday from ESPN's Shams Charania in regards to Tyrese Haliburton. Mark, let's go ahead and play that clip. Again, we haven't had the injury discussion really all postseason long with the Pacers outside of Jarris Walker's situation, and even there you're talking about the 9th, 10th man, but in regards to Haliburton and his status coming up for tomorrow night, here was Shams yesterday.
The belief is that Tyrese Haliburton has strained his right calf, and I'm told he will undergo an MRI to determine the exact severity of this strain. And remember, this is the same leg that he had ankle soreness in last week. He was adamant after Game 5 that he would be playing in Thursday's Game 6 of the NBA Finals. It is the NBA Finals, but it was described to me today that if this were the regular season, or even the first round, there's doubt that he would play. So once the Pacers and Haliburton get the results back on this MRI, on that calf strain, they're going to be able to identify the severity and then huddle and map out exactly what the plan will be going into Game 6.
I hear that, and none of it sounds good to me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's a tricky thing to kind of weave your way through, mainly because I believe Evan Sherrill, shout out to Evan Sherrill, Cluster Truck, make sure you order there all the time, great food. He mentioned, hey, I understand that this is the face of the franchise and you have to see the big picture, but he also was like, isn't this the big picture? Like, isn't this what you're playing for? And so I understand that, but
even if we aren't debating that, James, even if we aren't debating the long term, like let's say for some reason the Pacers get word from the medical team, hey, risk for a long-term injury, it's not there.
Okay.
So even if he does play, I go back to what I said to you to start the show. I have questions about Tyrese Haliburton at 100% against this Thunder defense. If now you're going to tell me he's 80%, what does that look? I mean, he is putting up turnover numbers in this series he's never sniffed. So even if, I think we have multiple, honestly, conversations with this Haliburton injury situation. Yes, we have the long term, but even if you want to play Evans' hypothetical, and you don't want to get into that. Hey, it's the finals, screw it. Put some dirt on it.
Right.
All right, fine.
Right.
If there is no risk for that injury, if you don't want to have that conversation, guys, I've got conversations about Game 6 of the NBA Finals and the turnovers and the compromising of Tyrese's overall health just for one game against this defense. That, I think, worries me even more.
I think I can agree with that, mainly because, as we've seen, they're able to get up in his grill and disrupt him unlike any other team we've seen in the NBA. And aside from, Game 3, where he almost had a triple-double, that was like the only breakout game that he's had against this team all year, even dating back to the 2 regular season matchups. So I do tend to agree with you there, Kevin, but at the same time, my whole thing is like, what is that conversation like? If you tell this man you're not playing in the NBA Finals, I would imagine Tyrese would be upset. So he can't veto you, but if you got to put money down on it, is he playing tomorrow? I would think so. Like,
if he's a game time decision, don't you think he's going to try to give it a go?
There's no more uneducated topic we ever talk about on this show than medical stuff. I'm like, why the hell? I didn't try to get in this business to offer some medical opinion. So here I am having to offer a medical opinion. Yeah, if I think he's a game time decision, yes, I think he will try and play. But then, okay, let's bring the other side of the conversation into it. What if they say, hey, you have a 20% chance of ripping your Achilles? Does that impact some things?
You go sit down, brother, and you grab some ice.
Tell that to Kevin Durant in 2019. Tell that to Damian Lillard in round 1. Tell that to Jason. So that's where I do think it's complicated. Now, if Tyrese, whatever, is limited or isn't playing, the Pacers have been much better without him this season. I do think that's a storyline that wasn't the case the year prior. Remember the year prior how bad they were?
They could not win a game without him. It was rough.
Without him. Now this year they're pretty much 500. I don't really include the last couple games of the season when you're benching a lot of guys, but they're pretty much 500 without him. And if you look at their point totals in the games, we're talking 117, 118, 118, 103, 132, 135. Those are very fine point totals and really some strong point totals in those games. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to grasp there a little bit.
I was going to say, were any of those wins against Oklahoma City?
The Oklahoma City defense is not who you're playing there. And as we pointed out earlier in the show, right now you're asking Andrew Nembhard to do so much defensively. Now are you going to ask him to put what you put on his plate last year in the Eastern Conference Finals when Haliburton was out? One thing about T.J. McConnell, and Rick has said this quite often, he exhausts himself so much in those stints that you oftentimes can only play him in kind of those 6 or 8 minute stretches because he's going full throttle. He's got to rest. Well, now if you asked him to play 36 minutes, is he still as effective given the minutes distribution?
Yeah, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful manner to TJ McConnell, but sometimes you'll get the question of, well, he did it for X amount of minutes. How come you didn't trust him more and just play him more? I'm like, if he were a better player, he would do this at a higher level for a longer period of time. Now, he's still a very good NBA player, a very good role player, but sometimes I'm reading the comments and it's like, well, TJ can get him going. TJ can put the team on his back. TJ can do this. And I'm like, if he could, he would be a star. It's very hard to do what he does, even in any capacity, let alone asking him, okay, you did it for 8 minutes in the third quarter of Game 5. Can you do it for 20 minutes in Game 6? Like, that's a hard thing to ask someone who, again, to your point, Kevin, he plays as hard as ever, as hard as anybody when he's in there. There is no chill TJ McConnell that we see.
Yeah,
because he can't be effective.
He doesn't throw the cruise control on.
No.
Yeah, Dustin, I maybe I'm not explaining myself super well. Dustin's asking, I don't get this. You're saying you would bench him? That's not going to happen. No, I'm not saying that. First off, medically, there's going to be a huge decision here. Like, that will decide a whole lot of it. But if he is out there playing, just like at the end of the fourth quarter last night or 2 nights ago, Rick Carlisle will have to have a conversation. What is better for your team right now? 78% Tyrese Haliburton or 100% TJ McConnell? That's the conversation you had at the end of Game 4. or Game 5, that will be the conversation you are going to have.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be to this degree, but James, go back to Game 7 of the Knicks series last year. You remember what OG Anunoby looked like? That was painful to watch OG Anunoby try to be the tough guy hero, Game 7 of the Eastern Conference semifinals, all of this, and he looked like, God rest her soul, my grandmother out there. I mean, it was painful to watch. And so that, I think, is the question. Again, it might not be to that degree, but if we're getting into percentages here, I mean, there was a debate whether Haliburton should have been on the floor to end the game the other night. And now if the adrenaline is worn off and the calf injury is serious, that's a real conversation.
I will say calf injury being a long-term issue or not, if they do play him and he's out there and he looks like he did in the second half of Game 5, yank him.
Right, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like, if you're going to give him a go,
give him a go. And honestly,
I can understand that.
At the start of the game, he theoretically should be his best, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the amount of treatment he's gotten.
But if he's out there looking like that, and this is a carryover from Game 5, I think he would even have to admit, look, man, we love you, but this is not working. Not with the season on the line. Season on the line, you cannot have a compromised player out there. I would much rather deal with a tired TJ McConnell, a tired Andrew Nembhard or somebody, than to have a Tyrese Haliburton out there on one leg who OKC is just feasting on. Because the flip side to this is you're not going to get any, grace from your opponent, especially not Lou Dort. Like, Lou Dort is going to get up in your freaking grill, and he's going to push you and shove you, and he's going to be physical with you, and he's going to make sure, okay, you say your calf hurts? I'm going to see how much it's going to hurt. And that's just how he plays.
Rick Carlisle in 15. The Pacers did make a trade yesterday. James Boyd, you've covered the NBA at times. I think the NBA and their off-season operations make zero sense to me. The fact that the Pacers are in the NBA Finals and they're executing a trade also sounds kind of wild.
It was wild.
1 week before the NBA draft, can you explain some of the rationale behind the Pacers trading their first-round pick for next week for a first-rounder next year that was with the Pelicans, which ironically is their own pick? This is all back to the Pascal Siakam trade, which was, 3 first-round picks, I think it was, for Siakam. They now have back their 2026 first-rounder, don't have their 2025 first-rounder. They also threw in the rights of Pacer legend Mojave King off to the Pelicans.
Yeah, from what I understand, and shout out to Tony East again for breaking this stuff down. He covers the Pacers for Forbes, and I'm sure I'll have a piece up pretty soon on them. And you can listen to this Locked On Pacers podcast where he breaks it down even more. He was actually, he had an old photo of, how you say his name? Mojave King. Mojave King on his laptop yesterday. On the next to him. Yeah, so he was breaking down the things. But from what I understand, this will clear cap space, a little less than $3 million in cap space, which every little bit will count if you intend on, as Shams Charania reported for ESPN, going into the luxury tax, assuming you re-sign Miles Turner. So that's one part of it. And then the second part is by, I believe, recouping the 2026?
Right, 2025 is gone, 2026 is
the 2026 first-round pick in return, then some kind of way you're able to trade more of your picks.
You can't trade. I think the NBA adopted this rule a few years ago. You can't trade. You have to have a pick every other year.
Right.
You can't trade consecutive years.
Exactly.
Picks. So, if you see these big trades, and I don't know, the Desmond Bane trade probably indicated this.
Yeah.
But you'll see 2025, 2027, 2029 picks traded.
Right.
And then they do pick swaps in the years even versus odd years.
Right.
It's kind of weird, but yes, this now allows for them, to your point, to trade more future picks.
Right.
If they would like to.
So it's like, could the Pacers take those picks and perhaps a player or somebody and go upgrade this offseason, whether it's to get, I don't know, another rebounding big, another scoring wing, another defending wing, something of that effect. So I would just say this is a move that gives them more flexibility for sure down the line.
So right now, looking at next week, the draft Wednesday, Thursday, number 54 overall is their only pick. That's obviously late in round 2. So the mock draft dreams of Danny Wolf and Liam McNeely. Finally, the Hoosier fans are getting Liam McNeely or Walter Clayton
You're
Jr.
telling me Cooper Flagg wasn't going to drop?
I don't think Cooper Flagg was.
I still have a Wimby to Indy hashtag or somewhere to be, filed. I was really pushing for that a few years ago. I'm heartbroken.
What were those
still.
lottery odds?
They were really low. But I was being from the Chicago area, I was like, it happened with Derrick Rose. What was it, 1% chance mark or something like that? And I was
1.7.
So when Wimby comes to Indy in free agency in a few years, let's get those T-shirts ready. Shout out to the shop, by the way.
Did you guys catch this stat from Scotty yesterday? Our Jiffy Lube stat of the day included this. The Pacers had 23 turnovers in Game 5. They are the first team in an NBA Finals to have multiple 20-turnover games since the Utah Jazz in 1998. I mean, James Boyd was rocking diapers, right, in 98? Or were you potty trained?
Probably potty trained by then. I was 3.
Okay, so maybe an accident or two.
Yeah.
But 1998 Utah Jazz, the last time a team in the NBA Final. We're talking about the Pacers.
Saying the mailman had some missed deliveries in Utah?
Byron Russell wasn't just tripping over his own feet. He had some, trip-ups there. That might be the most dad joke that you've said on the show, which is saying something.
That was pretty solid, though.
Shout out to my good buddy Andrew Walker. Used to cover the Colts. He had a shirt I saw he was rocking that said, "Dad joke loading." And Mark, it was like one of those like video game like loading, icons on there. I'm like, boy, for Mark's birthday. Your birthday's in December, is that right?
Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th, man.
Yeah, I honestly need to think about getting you that shirt.
Appreciate that. As long as it's not like a matching Speedo.
By the way, should we open up some mail tomorrow on the show?
Sure.
I don't think I'm ready to do it today. But I think tomorrow it'll be game day. And if we're burning Jeff's jersey, we might as well welcome another piece of clothing.
I'm not kidding. That jersey needs to get burned. That's why he's missed days, probably, in reality. He's not actually sick. He's like, I don't want my jersey burned.
Oh,
but that's 2 losses now.
He can't.
The thing's got to go.
He got on the elevator to come up, and then he saw Mark around the corner with the lighter, and was like, you know what? I'm feeling a little sick. Got to check out.
Saw the Zippo, and he booked it out.
Rick Carlisle in a few. I do think some optimism, just Game 6, and we should probably just live in a Game 6 bubble. We probably shouldn't go any further than that. But the Pacers have been the best three-point shooting team in the playoffs, and really it hasn't been close. Does that show up for a game? Does that show up for 2 games? I know it showed up in Game 4 a little bit, just the discrepancy, and the Pacers weren't able to finish off that game. But, if you're looking for optimism, yes, obviously Haliburton's presence would impact how great of three-point looks you get. He obviously is a great three-point shooter. But, James, you've kind of hit on this a little bit here throughout the finals. We still haven't had the 18-3, 48%. And I know it's a big ask, but not necessarily for this team. This team has, throughout the postseason, they have shot it at an extraordinarily high level. We have yet to see that really here in the finals.
I agree with that. And I think if you're going to have it, it will be at home, right? Like, you got the crowd behind you, see a couple go through, and they've been the best three-point shooting team in the playoffs. So, again, to your point, Kevin, it isn't totally out of the realm, but, man, part of the reason why I think it hasn't happened so far, to give OKC some credit here, is that they fly, they swarm, they fly around, and they make everything really, really hard for you on offense. Besides just driving the basketball, I thought that they were in all the passing lanes in Game 5, and there were at least 4 or 5 possessions, Kevin, where you're up against the clock, and they were just chucking up bad shots because they couldn't get an open look. And so without Tyrese, I wonder who can be that guy to create an advantage for you and get OKC's defense rotating to the point where you do get an open look. For example, is it TJ McConnell getting downhill, getting 2 feet in the paint? Is it Andrew Nembhard creating off the dribble? But you need someone to create an advantage. And if you don't get that from those 2 guys, or even a Benedict Mather or somebody else like that, it's very hard for you to get the open looks to then knock down some shots and have a big night.
And for the most part in this series, we have seen the role players in their home buildings flourish. I think that's the case with Wiggins and shooting the ball for the Thunder. I know Caruso had a big game, here, but still, for the most part, even Dort shooting it a little bit better there. I think Isaiah Joe might have hit a couple shots with the Thunder. If you look at it from a Pacers standpoint, I think that played out a little bit in Game 3 and Game 4. Much more on what is necessary for Game 6. The Pacers back to practice today. The latest with Rick Carlisle It's on the other side. Fan Morning Show right here, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Tuesdays at 8, turning into Wednesdays at 8. Late travel back from the Pacers after Game 5. So Rick Carlisle sliding over into the Wednesday 8 o'clock slot. Back to practice later today. And again, Game 6 upcoming tomorrow night. That is 8:30 inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. As always, we appreciate the time from the Pacers head coach. Coach, good morning to you. How are you?
Just fine.
Let's start with the biggest news item right now. Do you expect Tyrese Haliburton to practice later today?
He is going to be carefully evaluated over the next 36 hours and will likely be listed as questionable on the injury report and probably will be a game time decision for Game 6.
How much, given his, I guess, the variety of leg ailments he's had this year, probably dating back to the Olympics, how much is that factoring in this decision? Maybe even the long term when you consider a calf? I might have some PTSD in asking the question, but how much is that part of the conversation right now?
Everything's on the table.
Rick, I'll go here. When it comes to evaluating, obviously what Tyrese means to your team versus what it could mean if you don't have him available, what's the balance of preparing, I guess, each scenario, like if he is available versus if he isn't available for a finals game?
Well, it's pretty simple. We have to prepare for both. And today, when we meet with the team before we go on the floor, and today's practice is going to be more of a walkthrough at this point in the series. We'll do a walkthrough. We'll have some shooting. We have to open practice for 30 minutes at the end, and then with the media at the end. But we have to prepare for two scenarios: one where he plays, and one where he does not.
And then obviously you have other point guards on your roster who have played well this season. One player who stood out in Game 5 and had a big third quarter with TJ McConnell. Can you just explain from a coaching standpoint what it's like to have a player who has that indomitable spirit and embodies it as much as TJ McConnell does with his effort, energy, and just all-out hustle?
Yeah, he's been such a big part of what we're doing here for the last, actually 4 years. He proved to everyone in the organization during the first year, as did Miles Turner, that he was a guy that we needed to try to keep here long term. And the story about TJ, I think Nate McMillan was the coach when they first acquired TJ, and they went through training camp, and there was another point guard. I forget exactly who it was, but I think the story I heard was that Nate told TJ that the other point guard was going to be the backup, and that just to stay ready. And in the first game, Nate ended up playing TJ at some point in either the first or second half, and in place of the other point guard who had gone out and played some, and then TJ hasn't relinquished the job since. And so that's just kind of who he is. And he was great in the third quarter and the early fourth. And depending on the situation tomorrow, we may need him for significantly more minutes.
That's the voice of Rick Carlisle, Pacers head coach, coming up Game 6 Thursday night. Again, as he said, a little bit more of a walkthrough for practice today. When you get into these elimination games, Coach, obviously you haven't had any in this playoff run, but in your prior history, how much do you or can you throw, minute count out the window knowing there's no tomorrow compared to, wait a minute, we need to keep our normal rotation. We need to keep our normal minutes. That's what's kind of got us into this situation. What is that balance like when you get into elimination games?
You guys are making these questions easy. Everything's on the table. I mean, that's the same answer I've had for 3 of your questions so far too. And it's pretty simple. It's, this game, we're tomorrow night, our task is to take care of home court, which is what they did in Game 5, and get to an ultimate game, which is Game 7. And so that's the task in front of us. We got to figure out exactly what tools are available to us as a team, and we got to consider everything. Minute count is throwing that out the window is easy to say, but if you have guys that are out there that are more fatigued than they should be, that's not good. And against this team, it's very difficult.
Rick Carlisle with us here on a Wednesday. Coach, you have praised certainly the Thunder's defense and how elite it is throughout this series. Very uncharacteristically, your turnover number has been a lot higher than you're used to. What are you pointing to, I guess, outside of just their defensive presence for that number being so high?
We just got to do better. Early in the game, we had a lot of uncharacteristic turnovers. Some of them were unforced, and we've got to create better space. We've got to move the ball better, and we've got to execute better. It's as simple as that. I mean, you factor in the turnover differential and the offensive rebounding differential, and they got 12 more shots in the game than we did, and that's very difficult to overcome, especially on the road.
Rick, obviously Jalen Williams had a big Game 5, and he's had a number of games over the last few in this series where he's played really well. What challenges does he present, particularly when he gets downhill like the way he's been doing the last few games?
Well, that's it. He's been able to get by us and get on the launching pad and create problems at the rim with made layups and ones and opportunities to go to the free throw line. And it comes down to the point of attack. Sometimes the point of attack is simply transition defense and loading 2 or 3 guys to his area of the floor. I mean, this is a young player that's a lot like Giannis now, just with his ability to go coast to coast and all that. This is one of the improvements he's made in his game from last year to this year. And so sometimes it's transition, sometimes it's early pick and rolls versus our pressure. In those situations, we need to have our bigs in better position to give support, and we got to make it harder.
Coming up, a little practice later today. Again, walkthrough, sounds like, from Rick Carlisle. And then tomorrow, Game 6, 8:30, the tip time here, Pacers and Thunder inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. You were asked this earlier in the finals, Coach, about the format, changing from 2-3-2 to the now the 1-1-1, Game 5, 6, and 7. You mentioned you were on the competition committee that voted for the change. I think you used the word, you look at this format more of like the purest form. Could you kind of expand on like a little bit of your decision making? Obviously, last time the Pacers were in the finals, it was different. What kind of went behind your thought process in that?
Well, I mean, I was one of 9 people that voted. So there's 3 head coaches, 3 GMs, 3 owners, and so there was a pretty significant amount of discussion over a couple of years, and I forget which year, but it just seemed to be getting a little glitchy. You play the 2 games at the site of the team that has the better record, and then you go to the other venue for 3 games. And it's so difficult at this time of year to win 3 home games in a row against whatever level of opponent, a finals level of opponent. It just felt to everyone like the 2-2-1-1-1 was better. A more frequent change of venue was more appropriate. When this first came in, it was in the '85 finals. That was my rookie year with Boston, and we were playing the Lakers that year. And the reason that it came into effect was for the media, so that the media would only have to make 2 major trips, or I guess maybe, you'd have to travel to the venue for the first 2 games, you'd have to travel for the next 3, and then you'd have to travel back for the final 2. So there were 3 trips instead of, more, whatever many it was, 4 or 5, whatever it was. And so it seemed to make sense, but was the competition the best that it could be? And so I think one of the other reasons you see longer stretches between games in the finals is that, you look back to 2022, for example, it's Golden State, Boston. I mean, those are massively long trips. I mean, those are 5-hour flights or 4.5, 5-hour flights, maybe even 5.5, depending on the wind. And so you need to build that in, and particularly an Eastern team playing in the Western Conference in that kind of a long trip. What I learned in Dallas, because we played in California a lot, was that in those situations, and we were only 2 time zones away, regardless of the situation, unless the game was an early afternoon game, you would stay overnight and then travel the next day. Otherwise, with the loss of time, you're coming back home, and you're getting in your bed at 5 a.m. or 5:30 or something like that, and then your sleep stuff could be messed up for a week or 10 days, and it just wasn't worth it. And in Dallas, I learned that, staying over and coming back the next day mitigated a lot of those issues. And so, in the old days, when I say the old days, when we were in the finals with the Lakers back in 2000, I think almost all Eastern teams in those days were, because they had private travel, were coming back after the games, and it was probably a pretty big mistake when you think about the importance of sleep and schedule and all that kind of stuff.
I know James asked you about T.J. McConnell earlier, and specifically him as a driver. It seems like, he's got a lot of great and elite and unique qualities. It seems like his relentless nature to always be downhill and driving might be near the top of that list. What makes him such, again, I guess, a relentless driver of the basketball?
Well, he has the ability and the skill. That's one thing you have to have. The other thing, he has an attitude, that you have to have too. You have to have a defiance. Getting into the paint is not easy in today's game. Now, the game is faster; it's more spread out. So, in some ways, that facilitates more paint drives because of all the shooting. But against a team like Oklahoma, they're a paint-first defensive team, and they have the athletes to get out to guard the paint and to get out and guard the three-point line. And so, you've got to be fast, you've got to be resourceful, you've got to have great change of direction, you have to be elusive, all those things. And but TJ is very, very unique that way, and so. That's one of the many reasons he's so important to us.
Rick, last one from me. You were included in a story from Ramona Shelburne where she described the coaching journey of Jenny Busek, your assistant, and you said in the story you believe she could possibly be the first female head coach in the NBA. Why do you feel that way, and what has she meant to your coaching staff, I guess, personally from a relationship standpoint, but also from an X's and O's standpoint as well?
Well, she's one of the best coaches in the world, and there are a lot of great coaches in the NBA. And so, just from the standpoint of who the best teachers, communicators, who has the background, who has done the work, who studies, who's always in a learning mode. She's one of the best, and so that's a very, very important reason for that statement. But he or she's her duties have fluctuated. When she first came, she was doing opponent scouts, and she was helping out a little bit with the offense. When she was in the WNBA, her teams were elite offensive teams in the W. And certainly with Seattle, she was an assistant there for many years with Sue Bird and Breanna Stewart. And she coached Lauren Jackson back when Lauren Jackson was probably the best player in the world. And Sue was very young, and they were elite offensive teams. And then, Sue was there for 20 years, and they continued to be very, very good. And then she went back as the head coach, and they remained elite. And now this part of her journey, she's focused more on defense and has really leaned into it. has had great support from Jim Boylan, who's one of the best defensive coaches in the NBA, and the two of them have collaborated to really help enhance our efforts at the defensive end over the last year and a half. So, those are the reasons, and her relationships with the players are great, and all of her skills, everything from communication to how she teaches the game, are very, very good. So she's got an amazing future ahead of her, and it's an amazing story that Ramona wrote, and I would encourage anyone to check it out.
Yeah, it was a great read. Ramona Shelburne also on Tyrese Haliburton, Caitlin Clark. Really enjoyed that piece from her as well. Coach, good luck tomorrow night. A happy belated Father's Day, and as always, thanks for being flexible with us.
Okay, thanks, guys. Take care.
Rick Carlisle there on a Wednesday. That'll be up on the podcast shortly. Mark, we don't usually do this, but do you have the Haliburton stuff clipped out? The interview is about 10 or 15 minutes long. So for those that maybe caught the back end of it, I think that is the newsiest item from it. So this was Rick Carlisle at the start of that interview on the update in regards to Tyrese Haliburton.
He is going to be carefully evaluated over the next 36 hours, and will likely be listed as questionable on the injury report, and probably will be a game time decision for Game 6.
I mean, that's more than I thought he was going to give, to be honest with you, but it does make sense with what we've seen from just their approach, and it makes sense to kind of leave it open-ended, but also be a little honest and say, hey, this isn't a surefire thing.
Yeah, and Rick quite often this morning went with the go-to, of everything's on the table or everything will be evaluated. And, I asked him a follow-up just on the long term, because I think that's something you can't ignore. It's part of your responsibility when you are, leader of the franchise or that high up within the organization. And, he definitely didn't discredit that. So I think that will factor in as well. And, even if we don't get into the debate, James, of, does he play, does he not play? I'll go back to how we led off the show today. A compromised Tyrese Haliburton has me worried. A compromised Tyrese Haliburton against this vicious of a defense has me really worried. 75-80% of Tyrese, that's when you get into these debates of, okay, how long is he out there? How effective is he? Should we go with more TJ? Should we go with more Andrew Nembhard on the ball? All of these things. It's probably the most Rick and the staff have had to deal with this stuff all playoff long. They haven't had to deal with the injury stuff, the how healthy are guys, how effective are guys. That is something that is unfortunately, but it's definitely a huge storyline going into tomorrow night.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't ignore it. I mean, this is the NBA Finals, and every little bit, no matter what edge you get or how you get it, counts. And so I definitely agree there, Kevin. And to Rick's point, the next 36 hours would be very interesting. Even the next few hours to see if he's out there in any capacity at practice.
Which sounds like just a walkthrough.
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, do I even want to walk in right now? Do I want you off your feet and getting more treatment? So, and honestly, a lot of these practices at this point in the finals, regardless of injury, are walkthroughs. I mean, who's going to be, going through real live 5-on-5 runs and things like that at this point in the season? But yeah, I'm just curious to see how it all plays out. And now we just got to, watch the clock, watch the injury report, and this will be a story until it isn't, whether he's available or not.
Yeah, I think the whole minute count tomorrow night is also a storyline. Rick has been very stringent with his rotation, or I should say kind of very consistent, probably is the better way to put it, with his rotation throughout the playoffs. It's not like he's increased his starter minutes to north of 40 like you see some teams do.
Right.
Does that change at all tomorrow night? I'm looking at the secondary ticket market. Mark, refresh my memory. The cheapest tickets for 3 and 4 inside of Gamebridge, those hovered like just under 1,000.
Yeah. What are we looking at now? It was like, I think I saw a couple that went for 400, and I mentioned it on Monday's show, and then somebody was trying to get them, and I'm like, I think they got swiped.
Cheapest ticket I'm seeing right now, this is 2 together, section 215 at 422.
Okay.
For tomorrow night.
Think the Tyrese injury had anything to do with that, or just the bad vibes after game 4 and 5?
Yeah, it's
Probably a little both.
Probably mostly the first, but yeah, probably a little bit of both. I'll be curious how much Thunder blue and orange is in there coming up tomorrow night.
I'm curious. I didn't see much of it, to be honest with you, when I was there for games 3 and 4.
Well, they had those employees. I don't even know what you call that level. Like, what's that little clubbish area?
Around 200s.
Yeah. They were loud in spurts, but that was it.
Yeah,
it's not,
but I wasn't walking through the arena and seeing a lot of OKC jerseys. I did see a Kevin Durant Thunder jersey in the bathroom, and I was thinking, are you allowed to wear that if you're a Thunder fan? Does it count? I don't want to be the one to judge. Jerseys are expensive, but I thought that was kind of funny because I'm like, that Kevin Durant does not want to be seen with the Thunder right now.
I thought I saw a Sonics Durant jersey. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Oh, respect. Okay.
At game 3. It was quite the atmosphere inside of Gamebridge Fieldhouse last night. Let's hit on that right here.
The Morning Checkdown on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
It got a bit testy on the court. The Fever really dusted the Connecticut Sun, especially in the final 3 quarters. Natasha Howard was a menace on the offensive glass. Caitlin Clark was pretty much herself, and Kelsey Mitchell had a nice scoring night, but tempers definitely flared. James, I guess let's just start with the first incident. What did you see from J.C. Shelton, Marina Mayberry, and all of that? That ended with, I thought probably should have ended with an ejection, but it did not.
Mayberry, we're going Andy Griffith.
Hubba Bubba is how I'm going to say it next hour.
Yeah, exactly. But Marina Mayberry, but I will say, from what I saw, Caitlin Clark got whacked in the face from J.C. Sheldon. I don't know if it was intentional, but a little reckless, poked her in the eye, and then J.C. Sheldon kind of bumped her afterwards, and Caitlin took exception, shoved her back, and then that's when Tina Charles came into the fray. She got a text putting her finger in Caitlin's face, and then Marina Mayberry just kind of gave her the Zaire Franklin shoulder to the ground, which, again, was surprising that she wasn't ejected for it. And then that kind of upped the ante in the game. There were a couple of technical fouls, flagrant fouls, things like that. And then we ended it, final minute of the game, with J.C. Sheldon getting a steal and Sophie Cunningham tackling her and just throwing her out of the air, which led to her being ejected. J.C. Sheldon was ejected as well, and I believe Lindsey Allen too, because they all kind of escalated the event. So wild night, a lot of extracurriculars for an otherwise lopsided victory. And lost in all of this, which I don't even think we covered in the first hour of the show, they are in the Commissioner's Cup final. So they have a chance to go out there and play for some big cash here.
$500,000
soon, pretty soon.
Player pool July 1st. That'll be the Commissioner's Cup. That's their in-season tournament for those unfamiliar with what it is. Mark, let's start. We'll play the Caitlin Clark audio too, but let's start with, I would say, the most passionate I've heard Stephanie White all year long.
There wasn't an explanation for the tech that she got. I think it was pretty obvious that stuff was brewing, right? When the officials don't get control of the ball game, when they allow that stuff to happen, and it's been happening all season long. All season long. It's not just this game. It's been happening all season long. This is what happens, right? This is what happens. You've got competitive women who are the best in the world at what they do, right? And when you allow them to play physical and you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete. And they're going to have their teammates' backs. It's exactly what you expect, right, out of fierce competition. So I started talking to the officials in the first quarter, and we knew this was going to happen. You could tell it was going to happen. So they got to get control of it. They got to be better. They got to be better.
Stephanie White said that Caitlin Clark wouldn't be answering any questions related to the officiating. If you watched the press conference, the Caitlin Clark body language told you everything you needed to know.
With that.
Picture Bob Knight game face video if you need to see what Caitlin Clark was doing up on the podium last night. Here was Caitlin Clark, and I thought really on the floor, and I think you can hear it a little bit in her tone, probably one of the more demonstrative and passionate nights she has had in the W.
Honestly, the review took too long for me. I wanted to get playing basketball again, and that's exactly what I did at the rest of the third quarter. I made all 3 free throws, and then it was a tough 3. I was excited about a 3, and, honestly, I got to give our crowd a lot of credit, too. I thought they were tremendous. They were cheering for us. They had our back, and I'm a passionate player, but at the end of the day, I'm here to play basketball, and that's what it is, and my game's going to talk, and that's all that really matters, and I love this game, and I'm going to give it everything I have, so I think that's what competitors do. You just step right back up to the challenge.
James, when she hit that late 3 and...
You like that?
Yeah, it was... that was pretty demonstrative from her. And then she did like the TJ McConnell around the court, asking the crowd for a little bit more there after hitting the three. So quite the energy level inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse last night for a random Tuesday game against the Connecticut Sun. But that is a win. That's now 2 in a row with Caitlin Clark back in the lineup. Out west, Thursday, I think it's like Thursday, Sunday, Tuesday. Their longest Western trip here of the season. Last night, Lord Stanley staying in the state of Florida. 5-1. The Panthers beat the Edmonton Oilers in Game 6. So for the second straight year, it is Florida over Edmonton. 1993, the last time Lord Stanley was raised by a Canadian team. So the Florida Panthers are your NHL champions. MLB yesterday, Reds win, Cubs win, Cardinals win, Indians won, Guardians won. I guess a good day for the Midwest, right?
Yeah, we'll take it. We'll take a lot of W's around here.
Gosh, I know I've said it before. I'm just afraid the Cubs are really good.
Yeah. You better be scared.
I mean, I feel like
keep that fear.
As Mark has his Cubs shirt on
Keep
today.
that fear.
I feel like the Reds and the Cardinals are winning a lot.
They are, but they're not making any hay.
None of it whatsoever. That frustrates me.
That's the way it goes.
A bit. Maybe we'll sneak in a Colts combo or two here throughout the show. Continue to go back to that Rick Carlisle audio from earlier, the latest on Tyrese Haliburton. Again, the Pacers will have, sounds like more of a walkthrough a little bit later today. What is left on the menu for the Pacers? What can they turn to in Game 6? We'll hit on that as well. Jeff still a little bit under the weather. Hopefully he'll be back tomorrow. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dykton on 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Thank you to Rick Carlisle for joining us. We'll play back a few of those highlights coming up. 9 o'clock hour. It does sound like they will be monitoring things pretty closely with Tyrese Haliburton and that right calf all the way up until game time and preparation for two scenarios. One if Haliburton plays and one if he will not. So again, Pacers on the floor a little bit later today for what sounds like more of a walkthrough practice. Any grand takeaways outside of that, James, from Carlisle?
Not necessarily, because as he pointed out, he gave us the same answer in about 3 different ways when it comes to everything being on the table, being desperate in a must-win game. But I do think that there is something to be said about how you game plan if you do have to roll with TJ McConnell and Andrew Nembhard, no Tyrese. And I still think that as well as they adjust during the game, the Pacers do, you can adjust a lot better when you build an entire game plan around this guy not being there. Like, it's very hard to change on the fly. Like, oh, wait a second, Tyus, well, he's not ready, he's not good, he's not ready to go, and then having to kind of pivot from there. So I think having that extra day in between games and travel, you're in your city now, you can kind of map out a way to getting a win, extending your season, and then, it's extending your season, and then going into a Game 7 with everything on the line.
One thing I'm curious about for Game 6, and I'll go back to the Mark Daigneault analogy, which I enjoyed probably because I like eating. When he said this earlier in the series,
menu.
He referenced the menu. At this point in the playoffs, when you get into these series, for the most part, you know what is on your opponent's menu. You just don't know when they will necessarily go to different parts of that menu. One thing we've seen a little of this playoff series, the Pacers don't do a lot of it compared to some other NBA teams. We've seen it a little bit, but I am curious, given how the Thunder shot the 3 in Game 4 inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse, do you go a little bit more zone? Is that something you would explore? Now, if Tyrese is off the floor, theoretically you have better defenders out there on the floor, but is that a wrinkle you would try at them at all? I would say this, James, your inability to keep SGA and Jalen Williams from straight line driving at you is a major problem right now. So could the zone, impede any of that and help you out in that area? I'm probably trying to throw at the wall right now, but that is a question that I do have.
Isn't that what Rick Carlisle kind of said, though? You have to try it all, kitchen sink.
But again, do you try it? Like, I get it. They are probably thinking about everything.
I think you do try it.
That is something I would like.
I think you do try it.
Just, all right, the Thunder have been an inconsistent shooting team in this postseason.
Yeah.
And you have had issues with SGA and Jalen Williams. You've really had issues just staying out of foul trouble a little bit, too, with them. So is that a wrinkle? I
think so. Because SGA isn't a prolific three-point shooter. He can make the three, but he isn't someone who scares me from deep. Like, for example, I think Anthony Edwards took almost 10 threes a game this past year. Might have led the league and made threes, and he really lit it up from behind the arc. SGA is more of a mid-range guy, so if you do get him in some of those longer shot situations, does that help you? And, if you're picking your poison here, I do want him to shoot more threes and jump shots.
He's 3 of his last 14 from 3.
Exactly. So I want him to shoot more of those than to get to the middies and the layups and floaters and things like that. And even Jalen Williams, I know he's had some big games as of late, but again, what do you rather have? Him settling for a three-pointer or him getting downhill and, as Rick pointed out, being one of the more athletic, bigs or wing players in the NBA and just dunking on everybody and attacking the rim. So, again, it is very hard to game plan for two dynamic scorers like those two, but I wouldn't say you can stick with the zone for a long period of time, but just throwing it in there to mix it up. It's like a boxer. Mixing up your jabs and things like that can't hurt you.
Mark Dykton will throw an I Gotta Know at us here upcoming in about 10 minutes. Again, we'll play some of the Rick Carlisle highlights in the 9 o'clock hour. James, we are a week removed from the Colts closing up shop on their offseason program. I believe their first training camp practice will be 5 weeks from today. We still await official word on the start to training camp. Anything you're brewing over on the Athletic as we now look back on the spring?
Yeah, so breaking news. I guess the inside scoop is I did follow a story this morning before the show about ranking the positions based off my level of concern. And so you can take a great guess at what number one is, quarterback. But then from there, what are other positions that may concern you, don't concern you? I think my last position group, I did 10 of them, was wide receiver. Like, I'm not too concerned about wide receiver. But I guess the interest there is the new kicker, Spencer Schrader, more of a concern to you than not having any of your projected starting linebackers take any reps during the spring and being, recovering from injury, joining a new defense with Lou Anarumo? Like, how much does that factor into things? Even tight end. As much as we have loved what we saw of Tyler Warren, he's still rather unproven. He hasn't done it on Sundays yet. So those types of things is what I kind of dove into. I believe that'll be coming out either today or tomorrow. You can dive into that. But for the most part, it's kind of just getting ready for what we will see come this summer or next month, which is position battles. I think that's when we get to really dig into those, Kevin, and kind of break down, okay, where's everybody at? Who's training in what direction, and what could it mean for the team, not only in the short term, but the long term when you look at the future of, contracts and things like that.
Before the season kind of unraveled late with some of those bigger losses, you look at last year, James, the early losses were one-possession games.
Yeah.
And even the wins were one-possession games.
I want to say all of their wins last year were one-possession games.
So when you bring that up, I know kickers cause people to go to We Grow Hair Indy. Like, I mean, it can stress the hell out of you.
Dude, my first game I ever covered was a tie, and they got rid of
Rodrigo Blankenship.
They got rid of him. Like, I only covered him for one game in my career.
Right. And again, this is good or bad. Matt Gay makes 4 field goals in Baltimore.
That
and
was
it's one of the
wild.
best wins they've had.
Upset Lamar Jackson.
In years. So I do think kicker matters a whole lot. And, again, Spencer Schrader has made 5 field goals in his NFL life. If you look at it, he has an absolutely booming leg. I mean, I'm not going to act like I'm some kicker expert, but I'm watching kickers at practice for the last decade or so. You'd notice the big leg of Spencer Schrader right away. Yeah. And they are uber betting on that leg and his mental makeup. He's one of the more positive individuals.
He's like talking to Ted Lasso.
Yes, that is a great way to put it. And he does have some soccer background, if I'm not mistaken as well. So I think it'll be Spencer Schrader as the kicker. Him and Maddox Trujillo is an undrafted kid out of
Automatics.
So that is the other guy he's competing with. But that storyline, and I say this for a lot of NFL teams, having a reliable kicker can oftentimes be the difference between 2-3 wins over the course of a season. So I know that's not the sexiest, position battle by any means, but kickers matter in the NFL, and sadly, Mark Dykton can probably speak to it more than anybody.
Yeah. What are you guys going to be more sick of charting at training camp? Completions by quarterbacks or kicks distance made?
I think it might be kicks, James, because it's hard to see the exact yard line and where they're kicking from. But we did.
I'm always like, did they make it? Like, I can't tell sometimes.
Luckily, the officials are, sometimes down there. But I did notice we had a kicking competition, in front of us in the spring, and they both were perfect. Yeah. So that was, I was like, oh, this is stress-free. You don't have to worry about it. Both of them were perfect. I would think Schrader's got a little bit of the leg up, I guess, pun intended there. But
Brian Mason did say that. He said he's on top
teams coordinator for those unfamiliar.
He's on top of the leaderboard, but like most positions, you got to earn it in camp.
All right, coming up on the other side, Mark Dykton's got an I Gotta Know to throw our way, and we'll get you updated on where things are from a Tyrese Haliburton standpoint. It is the Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
We'll give you the latest on Tyrese Haliburton here upcoming. Rick Carlisle was with us a little bit earlier. We'll play that back here in a few. I must say, guys, watching Lord Stanley go to the home team last night, man.
Got a little jealous right there?
Yeah, I thought about what tomorrow night could have been. Inside of Gamebridge Fieldhouse. You imagine just the uneasiness watching that as a fan? The nervous energy. Like if you thought Game 6 on a Saturday night against the Knicks was special,
boy,
can you imagine what tomorrow night could have been? And then
it's like dating a girl. You're like, if I would have made a couple more moves, where would that have gone?
The what ifs, Mark.
Yeah.
As he goes,
all you're thinking about.
As he goes through his UND Rolodex. But Ashley obviously was the best. When it was all said and done. But now, what's the energy tomorrow night? Is it funeral? Is it eulogy?
Well,
or is it no? Make them earn it in Game 7.
Are you asking from a player standpoint or from a fan standpoint?
Fan.
Make them earn it. I think Indiana basketball fans will certainly force you to earn it.
Do you slowly move through the security line tomorrow night, or do you have pace? Are you throwing your keys in the person's bucket in front of you?
You got pace.
Okay. All right.
You have hope. You have the power of togetherness, friendship, as Miles Turner referenced, and you hit your wagon to Andrew Nembhard and T.J. McConnell if Tyrese Haliburton is compromised, and you say, let's roll with these guys.
And last year when Tyrese did not play in the Eastern Conference Finals, it was Ben Shepherd sliding in the starting lineup. Andrew Nembhard, I thought was outstanding.
Dude, they gave them a game. And now, obviously, someone's going to be like, well, they lost, they got swept. But they gave them a game.
Well,
it was
2,
not
right?
given.
I mean, 3 and 4.
Yes.
I think Ty left Game 2 a little bit earlier. So, again, we'll give you that update here in a few. Mark Dykton, should we delve into your brain?
He's got questions.
How about a game?
They've got answers.
Hey, I'm more of a cornhole man myself.
Sports, music, movies.
What?
High fashion.
That Hansel's so hot right now.
And everything in between.
You ever seen a foot with 4 toes?
It's time to get a glimpse into the mind of Mark Dykton.
Stop it, you're scaring me.
It's time for I Gotta Know.
Okay, you punks, I want a good, clean fight. Let's get it on.
All right, boys. Has this finals run that the Pacers are on changed your expectations for the team going forward? Beyond next season? Are they a continuous front runner in the East now? Or is this like another blip on the radar and we'll see what happens? Obviously, there's Boston and other teams like that. Where are your expectations for the Pacers going forward?
I think they're legit. Now, I don't know if they'll get back to the conference finals every year. Obviously, the finals every year. But I think they'll be in Eastern Conference Finals contention for the foreseeable future as long as Tyrese Haliburton is obviously healthy moving forward, Pascal Siakam. But I think you cannot discredit what this team has done, especially building off of last year when everyone thought that would be like the Atlanta Hawks run from a few years ago where you make it, you don't make it back. No, this team is legit. And they've proven against the best teams in the NBA.
Well, and again, let's go back to that stat from January. I mean, since January, it's them and the Thunder, the two best records in the league. So
Can't
even if you want
that.
to say, oh, man, some of these comebacks have been fluky, well, I would push back on that with 6 months of evidence. Yeah, Mark, I think you've created probably, 3-year window? Something like that? I mean, I'm trying to project, whenever Siakam and Turner, assuming you re-sign Turner, whenever that reaches the next crossroads.
Does Turner's status change any of your expectations, by the way?
Well,
if he's not
some
back,
reason Turner's not back, I mean, what the hell are you doing at center?
Right.
I mean, that might be the greatest. Turner, I think, is a very good fit for the Pacers. Let me be clear. But honestly, the greatest advocate to bringing him back is what the bleep else are you doing at center?
Yeah.
I mean, James Wiseman and Isaiah Jackson are both not only free agents, they're both coming off torn Achilles. And look at how the playoffs have played out.
Yeah.
Thomas Bryant and Tony Bradley.
And Miles is still you're going to have me in tears again like I was yesterday. Shout out to Jay. But I think Miles is still a very good NBA player, and a lot of teams would love to have his skill set. It can be frustrating. He doesn't rebound more. It doesn't play with enough force. But, I mean, pay up, man. You need him.
Well, James and I went down this rabbit hole after the show one day where we were like, who are some free agent centers? Like, if they were to move on from Miles Turner, who's available? Ooh, you want some Naz Reid? You want some Brooke Lopez? You want the bones of Al Horford rolling through here? They're all in their late
bones
30s.
Of Brooke Lopez at this point, too.
Yeah, I mean,
they're all in their
Naz
late
Reid is
30s
good,
and not
but he's
very
going to be
good.
very expensive. I mean, he's not Miles Turner. He's not going to give you that rim protection.
Well, and guys, they don't have their first-round pick after yesterday either. Not that rookies come in and instantly impact, but even if you wanted to play that game. So, yeah, to answer it, Mark, I think a 2 to 3 year window where you should be right there knocking on the door. And obviously next year, the Celtics have a massive injury on their hands with Jason Tatum.
True or false, the Colts starting quarterback competition is already decided with the latest setback for Anthony Richardson.
True for week 1. I think Daniel Jones starts week 1 now because Anthony's missed so much time this spring and so many reps. But as we all have said throughout the show, the QB competition will continue throughout the season because every time one of the quarterbacks has a bad performance, we'll be looking like, are you going to put the other guy in?
Yeah, I would say true as well. I just don't think time is on the side of Anthony Richardson. The Colts have an earlier start to training camp. They have their first preseason games a little bit earlier. Even that stuff is going against him. So,
and they're telling us when he does come back, he has to be eased back in. So this isn't like, okay, you're full throttle.
Yeah, and I would assume and think that, well, two things. I would assume and think that they want to name a starter decently early into August. And two, I think Shane Steichen is very optimistic about Daniel Jones under center. He really is a bullish believer in him with Daniel Jones, the Colts with Daniel Jones compared to the Giants situation. So we'll see, how all that plays out. But yeah, right now I would say, yeah, true.
What is an athletic event you could beat everyone else's ass in the studio in? Like, we know Jeff's setting the course record at Oakmont. He's already stated that. So,
well, Jeff's answer would be cooking us on the Schwinn, right? Jeff's a big cyclist, correct?
Yeah.
I feel pretty confident on the golf course.
Yeah,
you've seen my swing,
take
Kevin.
You in that one.
Do I even have a swing? I mean, it took me 3 times to hit the ball when we were doing the little Colts media hacks the other day. So I'll go basketball. I really and part of that is youth. I mean, part of my advantage when it comes to basketball is I'm slim and I'm going to run. So if you don't move, I'm going to get a lot of layups because you might not have the condition to keep up. Except for JMV. JMV runs. I'll give him credit for that.
Mark, before you chime in, I might want to get in a little shooting contest with James Boyd.
Shooting, you probably get me.
Okay.
I'll admit that. I'm not the greatest shooter. I didn't have the Indiana jump shot growing up, but full court 5-on-5, I'm good.
Is that in a regulation gym or is that the gym downstairs that's got like a 6-foot ceiling?
Oh, I'm taking me on that one because you're too tall to shoot.
Well, I would say my natural arc is a little bit more of a line drive. I'm not the Miles Turner rainbowy. But
I've clanked so many shots down there.
I know. Every time I'm like, I feel like that's going well, and then boom.
I'm going to set off the sprinkler system one day. I'm going to hit it and it's going to go off. I would say soccer for me. Played soccer since I was a kid.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll get crushed.
Is the endurance where it was back in the day in high school of a young Mark Dykton? No, it's not, but I think I could still take you boys there.
One thing I was thinking about was yesterday I took the kids to Children's Museum in the afternoon. Like, that sports center outside.
It is nice.
That is one of the greatest things
it's immaculate.
ever invented. Like, I just want to not even take my kids there.
I know.
Yeah.
And go in it.
I go there with them, and I'm annoyed that because we want to go somewhere else. I'm like, I'm trying to kick some field goals here.
Like yesterday, I wanted to be like, no, I'm not getting the treehouse. You guys go in the treehouse and let me do my thing.
Right.
Yeah. I will say this:
go on the die course and do some putt. Yeah.
I've been there a couple times.
Racetrack in the back.
I've been there a couple times for Colts events. I think Kenny Moore had an event there one year or before the draft, and I always think when I see the statues, like, wow, that's the only Reggie Miller statue in the city. That's the only Tamika Catchings statue in the city. Slick Leonard has a statue at the Children's Museum. Like, come on.
Yeah.
We need our icons to be a little more recognized than that. But it is cool to kind of go over there and see all the Indiana sports icons.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, last one. The worst trend from your childhood you wish you could wipe away. Like, my parents were busting out, like, photos and everything like that. And I had, like, this horrible haircut. And it was just like, can we, like, get rid of, like, the frosted tips back in the day?
I would say my brother had more of the ugly bowl cut. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of the braces. Granted, that's kind of out of my control. I don't know. I mean, now I'm like really getting into my height. I don't know. Like, I felt like, could I have attacked my my pimply face a little bit more?
Not enough Stridex pads is what you're saying?
Yeah.
I don't think those ever work.
Yeah, can I
either.
keep my oily fingers off my, the bottom of my chin in that area there? So, I don't know. Nothing says nice puberty thought like a bunch of pimples on your face. So, I'll go there.
I'm trying to think. Maybe the shorts under the jeans. I did that all the time.
Oh,
growing
those
up.
are great.
But I don't know if that's like a trend that I would change. I just think that in hindsight, like no one does that now. My god kids look at me like I'm crazy if I told them I used to wear basketball shorts because you had to be ready to hoop them up.
Then you're ready to lace them up,
Yeah,
right?
at any moment. So that was our trend growing up.
Nothing screamed douche like the popped collar in high school. Do you remember the polo
gosh,
popped collars?
Man, I can see it right now.
You were like, that guy is a complete turd.
Yeah.
I remember the rubber bands around the ankles of my pants because you had super baggy jeans.
Oh, like
with the rubber,
T.I.?
Yeah, like I had the rubber bands, and I was like, looking back at it, James Boyd was not a rapper from Atlanta.
Didn't have the Band-Aid like Nelly either.
I mean, I will say there's a few like holiday pictures while my mom dressed me in. I'm like, I should have got my ass beat wearing that stuff.
The Jenko jeans, I don't know if you guys remember these, but the giant pants that kids would wear, like they just covered your entire shoe, and you just be walking around.
We had a few big saggers in high school, and like, if I accidentally put like Max Bone in a 3T instead of a 2T, it's like, damn, man, he looks like, some of my sagging buddies in high school that are,
Yeah, nothing screamed you listen to Marilyn Manson and whatnot when you were walking around with Jenko jeans and like a chain wallet.
So true. So true. Mark Dykton, excellent. With I Gotta Know. What did Rick Carlisle say on Tyrese Haliburton? What are his thoughts on Game 6? He had a lot to share earlier. We'll play some of that upcoming 9 o'clock hour. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, and Mark Dykton.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
9 o'clock hour here on a Wednesday. Thank you for spending it with us. Again, Jeff, a little bit under the weather, so it is Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dykton. For a second straight day, if you missed the Rick Carlisle updates, he actually, I thought, shared a little bit more than I was expecting him to. We'll play that back
You buttered
for
him
here
up
in a couple minutes.
Well, it took, years.
I don't think about that. Yeah, I'm not sure if I did
Buttering
that.
those biscuits, Kevin Bowen.
But nonetheless, we appreciate his time and his updates. Ahead of Game 6 coming up tomorrow night. Reminder, our golf outing, this is 107.5 The Fan. All three shows will be represented down at the Legends on August 7th. That is the Fan Golf outing. Make sure you check out our website, 107.5 The Fan, for event details. The Legends used to host the state finals. Shout out to the IHSA Boys Golf State Finals today. Westfield trying to not be the Buffalo Bills anymore, trying to get it done there at Prairie View. They're in a nice position after round one, but Zionsville, the defending champ, lurking. Homestead lurking. Evansville North lurking. Evansville North strikes me as a good athletic department. I know nothing about Evansville schools, but I saw they're in the baseball state finals.
It wouldn't surprise me if they have a lot of kids, and then it is what it is. I actually had a chance to talk to a kid who goes to Carmel at AC's golf outing, and the kid is going over to ASU next year, started his freshman year in college, and he was just telling me about all the
Arizona
great
State?
Yes. And he was telling me about all the great athletes they have. He's like, yeah, for our
party.
media class, we had a chance to. Truly, I did tell him that. I was like, did you choose that school for journalism or for something else? And he said it's for journalism. I'm like, okay, I think I trust you. But he was telling me, I interviewed one of my classmates, and I guess she had won. I forget her name, but she won a gold medal, and I was like,
"Oh yeah, Shackle, Alex Shackle, is that her name?"
Yes, that is her. And they refer to her as Shaq, and he goes, "Yeah, Shaq won a gold medal," and I'm like, "Which Shaq?"
Won a gold medal and shown up to whatever geometry the next day.
That's how I know God had to give certain gifts to certain people, because I would be the most arrogant person alive. You try to hand me a paper, I'm like, if it gets out my face, gold medal, okay? You should just pass me off the strip of me representing my country.
Show and tell a little bit different for Alex Shackle than it is other people. Anthony asks this: if you don't have Haliburton, do you start Matherin or move Neesmith to the 2 and start Obi? Before you answer, I'll let you simmer on that. Just to remind people, last year in the Eastern Conference Finals, now Matherin obviously was out, but last year in the Eastern Conference Finals, they started Ben Shepherd. Rick has always been, I think, a big believer in how do we limit messing up both units as much as possible. And so I think kind of viewed obviously, Shepherd, they view him defensively as a guy that they want out there. So Shepherd went in the starting lineup, and that's how they operated from there. Do you think they would explore either of these two items here that Anthony throws out, starting Matherin, or move Neesmith to the 2 and start Obi? Boy, you'd be big with Neesmith, Obi, Siakam, and Turner.
I might go small, because I want to say that OKC's been pretty. They have played the two big lineup.
Yeah, they've started the two bigs lately.
Yeah, so it's tough, but I might go small and see if I can run them a little bit, and try to get Isaiah Hartenstein in foul trouble by chasing Obi or something like that, or trying to get up and down. But it is certainly not an easy choice. You probably need a mixture of both, to be honest. That's a tough one.
I am. I'm probably overthinking this, but if Haliburton doesn't play or is severely limited, you're gonna need more from Nembhard offensively.
Yeah.
So do you take him off SGA, which I just can't imagine them doing, given how they've treated this series. I mean,
especially with that way Aaron Neesmith, it seems like he just can't guard the guy
without fouling.
Yeah, and they're calling those ticky-tack things, at least for SGA throughout the series.
And, I mentioned zone to you earlier. That's kind of why, that's part of the reason why I mentioned it. But is there a thought process of, hey, you hope you get Scott Foster on the crew tomorrow, the whistles will be swallowed, Neesmith guards SGA, Pascal guards Jalen Williams, and again, you allow Nembhard to then be into a heavy offensive role, and that would be Shepherd in the starting lineup. I mean, part of me still likes Matherin just, dominating the ball with that second unit. And I do think Matherin and McConnell play well off each other. I think Matherin's a great, great cutter, and I think McConnell does such a great job of finding that. So These are the possibilities that Rick Carlisle has got to explore. He shared some of that with us here. Again, a few snippets from Rick Carlisle on with us earlier today. Let's start with the biggest news item right now. Do you expect Tyrese Haliburton to practice later today?
He is going to be carefully evaluated over the next 36 hours, and will likely be listed as questionable on the injury report, and probably will be a game-time decision for Game 6.
How much, given his, I guess, the variety of leg ailments he's had this year, probably dating back to the Olympics, how much is that factoring in this decision? Maybe even the long term, when you consider a calf. I might have some PTSD in asking the question, but how much is that part of the conversation right now?
Everything's on the table.
Rick, I'll go here. When it comes to evaluating, obviously what Tyrese means to your team versus what it could mean if you don't have him available, what's the balance of preparing, I guess, each scenario, like if he is available versus if he isn't available for a finals game?
Well, it's pretty simple. We have to prepare for both. And today, when we meet with the team before we go on the floor, and today's practice is going to be more of a walkthrough at this point in the series. We'll do a walkthrough. We'll have some shooting. We have to open practice for 30 minutes at the end, and then we'll do media at the end. But we have to prepare for two scenarios: one where he plays, and one where he does not.
And then obviously you have other point guards on your roster who have played well this season. One player who stood out in Game 5 and had a big third quarter with TJ McConnell. Can you just explain from a coaching standpoint what it's like to have a player who has that indomitable spirit and embodies it as much as TJ McConnell does with his effort, energy, and just all-out hustle?
Yeah, he's been such a big part of what we're doing here for the last, actually 4 years. He proved to everyone in the organization during the first year, as did Miles Turner, that he was a guy that we needed to try to keep here long term. And the story about TJ, I think Nate McMillan was the coach when they first acquired TJ, and they went through training camp, and there was another point guard. I forget exactly who it was, but I think the story I heard was that Nate told TJ that the other point guard was going to be the backup, and that just to stay ready. And in the first game, Nate ended up playing TJ at some point in either the first or second half, and in place of the other point guard who had gone out and played some, and then TJ hasn't relinquished the job since. And so that's just kind of who he is. And he was great in the third quarter and the early fourth. And depending on the situation tomorrow, we may need him for significantly more minutes.
That's the voice of Rick Carlisle, Pacers head coach, coming up Game 6 Thursday night. Again, as he said, a little bit more of a walkthrough for practice today. When you get into these elimination games, Coach, obviously you haven't had any in this playoff run, but in your prior history, how much do you or can you throw, minute count out the window, knowing there's no tomorrow, compared to, wait a minute, we need to keep our normal rotation. We need to keep our normal minutes. That's what's kind of got us into this situation. What is that balance like when you get into elimination games?
You guys are making these questions easy. Everything's on the table. I mean, that's the same answer I've had for 3 of your questions so far, too. And, it's pretty simple. It's, this game, we're tomorrow night, our task is to take care of home court, which is what they did in Game 5, and get to an ultimate game, which is Game 7. And so that's the task in front of us. We got to figure out exactly what tools are available to us as a team, and we got to consider everything. Minute count is. Throwing that out the window is easy to say, but if you have guys that are out there that are more fatigued than they should be, that's not good. And against this team, it's very difficult.
Rick Carlisle with us here on a Wednesday. Coach, you have praised certainly the Thunder's defense and how elite it is throughout this series. Very uncharacteristically, your turnover number has been a lot higher than you're used to. What are you pointing to, I guess, outside of just their defensive presence for that number being so high?
We just got to do better. Early in the game, we had a lot of uncharacteristic turnovers. Some of them were unforced, and we've got to create better space. We've got to move the ball better, and we've got to execute better. It's as simple as that. I mean, you factor in the turnover differential and the offensive rebounding differential, and they got 12 more shots in the game than we did, and that's very difficult to overcome, especially on the road.
Rick, obviously Jalen Williams had a big Game 5, and he's had a number of games over the last few in this series where he's played really well. What challenges does he present, particularly when he gets downhill like the way he's been doing the last few games?
Well, that's it. He's been able to get by us and get on the launching pad and create problems at the rim with made layups and ones and opportunities to go to the free throw line. And it comes down to the point of attack. Sometimes the point of attack is simply transition defense and loading 2 or 3 guys to his area of the floor. I mean, this is a young player that's a lot like Giannis now, just with his ability to go coast to coast and all that. This is one of the improvements he's made in his game from last year to this year. And so sometimes it's transition, sometimes it's early pick and rolls versus our pressure. In those situations, we need to have our bigs in better position to give support, and we got to make it harder.
Again, that's a snippet from Rick Carlisle with us earlier in the show. That full podcast will be up 107.5 The Fan. Again, Fan Morning Show with that. When he mentions Jalen Williams there, and how he described it was kind of interesting, how he gets by us and then creates the launching pad. That has been a huge issue this series. The inability for the Pacers to create straight line drives and the ability by Oklahoma City to create that with Shea, with Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams has been an all-NBA first teamer these last 3 or 4 games. And he was not that the first 2 games of the series.
You know what else stood out to me beyond just him? You look at the SGA and you're like, okay, the MVP had 31 points, 10 assists as well. So, I mean, you look at the shot creation they've done for themselves.
After 0 the game before, right?
Yeah. So you look at the shot creations they've had for themselves, but also producing those shots for others. They're a hard tandem to beat for sure, especially when, like you said, Jalen Williams gets rolling like that. I mean, the scary part for them and for perhaps the rest of the league is if they do pull this off and win the championship, they're young. They're going to get better. Like, I don't know if this is the final version of Chet Holmgren. I don't believe it is. Same with Jalen Williams. SGA, he's already the MVP. How much better can he get? And even if he doesn't get any better, he's the MVP. He's averaged 30 for the last 3 years. So it's a lot to throw at you. But at the same time, if you're going into Game 6 for the Pacers, my thinking, if you are the Pacers, is, hey, we're going back home. Maybe we can get some energy from the home crowd and have one of those games where we can't miss from 3. That, to me, would be the great equalizer.
Yeah, I think a big thing, too, to keep an eye on is, and Lord points this out here in the YouTube chat, is thank you to the great Evan Sherrill in here from Cluster Truck. Yes. We got Dunk Fest tonight, Evan. Throw that mic on, Mark, there in the middle. I want to make sure that we have this right here. NBA Finals game, courtesy of Cluster Truck. Evan, you always smell so good when you come in the studio, man.
He actually showers before he comes in, unlike somebody else I know.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, Dunk Fest, give us the lowdown on that here in the finals.
Yeah, so we got our house-made cheesy bread, hand-stretched, house-made garlic butter, chips and white queso, which is also made in-house, chips fried fresh in-house every day, our churros, and a 2-pound strips and dip. I was forgetting that, but 2-pound strips.
My kids love the chicken strips.
Very nice. Hand-breaded, hand-dredged in-house, and it's all for $29.99. So all the dunkable items, you could be like Obi Toppin, dunking the churro in some caramel sauce. So.
The best in-game dunker in NBA history, right, James Boyd? Is that correct?
I'm not kidding. I will not literally down this hill, but I will down this hill saying he's a top 5 in-game dunker ever. I don't care.
I like that take.
That man can throw it down.
He can, and casually.
Yes, people would say, well, Dominic Wilkins, he was not taking the ball through his legs casually on a fast break. He does it like 5 times a season.
That scares me occasionally when he goes through the legs.
I know.
Because there's so much room to embarrass yourself there. But
he's only
he's got
embarrassed himself like twice out of like the 50 times he's done it.
I was going to say, he pulls it off.
I know.
They're going to need a big Obi night tomorrow night. FAN is your promo code, FAN, very simple there. Cluster Truck, excellent. Again, the Dunk Fest on nights of Pacer games. So coming up tomorrow night.
We did Dunk Fest on Game 5. Excellent.
Yeah,
the chips and queso went instantly. My kids loved it.
We did it Final Four Saturday, and I've been waiting for it to pop up back here. Obviously, the basketball theme to it. So
it is the move. It's a lot of food for, like sometimes my wife and I will get it. It's a lot of food for just 2 people, but then you have leftovers. It's nice. And yeah, with code FAN, it's what, like $24.99. So not too bad.
We've gotten some run out of the chicken strips. My daughters are having that for like lunch today again. It's outstanding though.
That is great. Evan Sherrill from Cluster Truck. Evan, thank you for the drop-off.
Thank you guys very much.
I must say, Evan's wearing the Colts polo. That's a true fan right there. Okay?
It looks like he's going to a training camp practice at Grand Park.
I know.
I will be. I need to be holding the sign asking for a Danny Pinter autograph this year. So this may be the last year.
The
We're gonna
Ball
make that
State
happen.
product, Evan Sherrill. That's a position battle, James. Sneaky.
It is.
Center is a very sneaky position battle. Tanner Bortolini, the 4th-round pick out of Wisconsin last year, and Danny Pinter. Thank you, Evan. Those two. Pretty much, James, I want to say the 5 viewings we had in the spring, I thought it was like every other day.
Yeah.
That they were out there battling for that.
He is the best smelling guy we have come in studio.
Oh, man.
I'm smelling him right now.
I'm swooning.
Do you think I smell the opposite of that?
I can't smell you from here.
Not
and
the
that's probably a good
opposite,
thing.
but
because if I smell the opposite, I really got to rethink not showering before the show.
No,
just for your
you're
guys'
not the
sanity.
opposite, but that'll turn some heads. Evan Sherrill.
I'll tell you what, Mr. Sherrill, congrats.
I know.
One question I do have for tomorrow night, I've mentioned all throughout this run, get OKC in the clutch, get him in the clutch, get him in the clutch. If you have to exhaust minutes tomorrow, if you have to, because these guys have all played, like 35 minutes is the most any of them have played in the playoffs?
The Pacers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Pacers live in 30 to 35 minutes. If Siakam now is asked to play 42, is he hands on the hips late? If Nembhard, who I think is the Energizer Bunny, if Nembhard is asked to play 43,
Neesmith,
is he hands on the hips? That is a concern for tomorrow. I mean, there is obviously a lot of concerns.
Yeah,
Tyrese's
that is
health.
one of them. But
can you be as effective? Because OKC won't treat it the same. They might have to in Game 7, of course.
Yeah.
But tomorrow night, I would guess they still treat it pretty much, and they've played their guys a little bit more. Shea's played a little bit more.
Yeah.
Jalen Williams. The Pacers have not. Are you still as effective late in the game that you've been when you ask guys to play more minutes?
That's a very good point, but I also think that these guys are very conditioned, and I don't know, does fear or desperation give you an extra boost there? Because at the end of the day, if you do end up, wind up losing this game or whatever, and I know still a lot to be decided on the actual floor, but if you lose and it's because you entered the tank and those guys maybe didn't have enough to get to the finish line, but you at least tried, there's like no shame in that. No moral victories, but no shame in emptying the tank. Because my fear would be, do you look up and say, you didn't play this guy 40 minutes and you lost by 6? And it's like, well, what are you saving it for? That's kind of my mentality. I mean, your whole mentality, and I'm sure Rick Carlisle doesn't need me to tell him this, is just to survive however you can. If you got to play every guy,
scratch, claw,
48 minutes, and guys are exhausted, and you limp into a game, it does not matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that, to me, kind of excites me, too, because you rarely get in positions as a coach or as a player where all bets are off. And so we'll have one of those scenarios tomorrow night where you're not really living for tomorrow. You do want to get to it tomorrow and get to a Game 7, but while you're in the moment, it is do or die.
Amen to that. Boy, I thought it was going to get it borderline got to dying last night inside of Cambridge Fieldhouse with the amount of physicality that was witnessed between Fever and Sun. Let's begin our morning check down there.
The Morning Checkdown on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Mark, it's rare that I ask you to play an audio clip 3 times throughout a show during the morning checkdown. I think the Stephanie White was so impassioned last night, and that was easily the most fired up I've seen her. It's probably worth it. Again, to set the scene from last night, James Boyd, Go ahead and fill us in. I don't know if the Stephanie White bad blood played into any of this, considering she used to be the Suns coach, but whatever it was, tempers flared on several occasions last night.
Yeah, late third quarter, J.C. Sheldon, the Connecticut Sun guard, poked Caitlin Clark in the eye. Then she bumped her afterwards. Caitlin took exception, shoved her. They got into a little dust up. And Marina Mabry kind of escalated the whole thing by shoving Caitlin to the floor. Now, surprisingly, she stayed in the game after that, was not ejected. But then later on in the game, there was some get back on J.C. Sheldon from Sophie Cunningham of the Fever, who just tackled her to the floor basically and threw her out of the air. So some ejections late, all those things. But we can hear from Stephanie White here when she was asked, hey, were you giving an explanation for why Caitlin Clark got a technical foul? And also just her overall thoughts on the officiating.
There wasn't an explanation for the tech that she got. I think it was pretty obvious that stuff was brewing, right? When the officials don't get control of the ball game, when they allow that stuff to happen. And it's been happening all season long. All season long. It's not just this game. It's been happening all season long. This is what happens, right? This is what happens. You've got competitive women who are the best in the world at what they do, right? And when you allow them to play physical and you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete. And they're going to have their teammates' backs. It's exactly what you expect, right, out of fierce competition. So I started talking to the officials in the first quarter, and we knew this was going to happen. You could tell it was going to happen. So they got to get control of it. They got to be better. They got to be better.
We should mention that was a very fair question, but not sure, James, if it was you or Tony East, but asked specifically, do you feel like this is a Fever issue or is this a league-wide issue? And
that was me. And the reason I asked that, Kevin, because she has made points throughout the season where she's like, we're getting picked on, our players, we got to protect, Caitlin
now, again,
and others.
Caitlin hasn't played really in 3 weeks.
Yeah, but I was just making sure, like, if you're going to say this, where are you kind of drawing line in the sand?
She did mention league-wide.
Yep.
There's been other instances of this, not getting a handle on games early on, it spilling over, it boiling over, et cetera, et cetera. On the floor, Fever in full control the final 3 quarters. Caitlin Clark had 20, Kelsey Mitchell 17. Natasha Howard I thought was really good, especially on the glass last night. So Fever couple in a row. They are now out west. They did win the eastern portion of the Commissioner's Cup with their result last night in the Liberty winning. So that puts them in the in-season tournament final coming up here in a few weeks, a $500,000 pool to play from. Speaking of playing, it was the Florida Panthers now hoisting Lord Stanley for a second straight year, 5-1 over the Edmonton Oilers. So the Panthers win that in 6. MLB, pretty good day from a Midwest standpoint. Reds win, Cubs win, Cardinals win, Guardians win, Indianapolis Indians won as well. I think we're down to 4 teams in the College World Series. Is that right?
You are asking the wrong person. I'm so sorry.
Anybody? God, where's Jeff when you need him? Come on, guys. Unbelievable.
Taking his 5th nap. No, I don't know. I haven't been paying attention. Been stuck with the Pacers and the Fever.
I was about to say, did you see what happened last night at Cambridge Fieldhouse?
Laughing at Evan Sherrill here in the YouTube chat. He goes, we were at Zubilation on Friday serving the Korean beef and broccoli. Shout out to the guy in a blazer and yellow Nemhard jersey who said, yo, is this what Jeff Rickard eats? Jeff would literally be, to use a Jeff phrase, he'd be bathing in his Korean beef and broccoli right now.
He needs to get a review on there on the cluster truck.
So Evan Sherrill smells wonderful. You don't smell like anything, and then...
Well, he smells like something, but it's not what Evan Sherrill smells like.
And then Jeff smells like Korean beef.
Louisville, LSU, Arkansas. My hint for the 4th team, Dustin Johnson played golf here in college.
Oh, you're asking, again, the wrong guy.
You think I know golfer college?
One of the more obscure nicknames in all of college sports.
I'm drawing a blank here.
The Citadel.
Oh, boy, I feel like Mark is close. Now you want me to... Gosh, I feel like Jake Query right now. Now I'm going to Google map this. Citadel to this school.
Yeah, you're going full-blown Jake right now.
Anything in that general area? The Citadel, South Carolina, is that right, Mark?
I don't know. Yeah, I know of it. I don't know where
These 2 schools are 2 hours apart. You go up from the Citadel
Charleston,
to
South Carolina.
Coastal Carolina, just north of Myrtle Beach. The Chanticleers, right?
That does sound like a nice place to go to college.
Makes sense. They're pretty good at baseball.
Charleston's a nice city.
I feel like I wouldn't go to class if I had a beach next to me.
No, not at all.
Lord have mercy.
Yeah, my work-life balance would be not, well, I guess good for the balance part of it from a life, but not necessarily a work standpoint. All right, much more as we look ahead to Game 6. Pacers back to practice later today. It is the Fan Morning Show here on a Wednesday. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, and Mark Dighton.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Well, I do like the song. I must admit that I'm sure our next guest has heard this quite a lot in his coverage of the Thunder. Before we get there, though, Mark, let's go ahead and give away a 4-pack of tickets to the Indy 11 coming up Saturday night, Las Vegas, the opposition. We'll go fast fingers on that, 317-239-1070. You want to go see a little pitch action, and that is Indy 11, 7 o'clock. Is that right, Mark?
Correct, yep.
On Saturday,
Yep.
Indy 11 in Las Vegas. We'll do fast fingers for the 4-pack, and James Boyd, go ahead and bring in our next guest.
Yes, so we have Cliff Brunt on the line from the Associated Press. He covers all things OKC. Cliff, how you doing, my man?
I'm good. How y'all doing?
I'm doing good. It's been a while since I talked to you. I remember I met Cliff in OKC, and he was like, take my number down and follow me on social media and stay in contact, and you're up and coming, and if you ever need anything, reach out. And I was like, you know what? Is that favor still, good? And cashed in a few years later. But, Cliff, I was reading some of your stuff in preparation for the show, and one of the pieces you did was on SGA. I know the star of Game 5 was Jalen Williams, and rightfully so, 40 points. But to see SGA going from having no assists in Game 4 to 10 assists and 31 points in Game 5, how have you seen that guy evolve over the years and lead this team to now one win away from an NBA championship?
Well, he's definitely evolved as a leader, and I think his leadership role started to emerge when he was here with Chris Paul. That he learned from one of the best in that way, and then as time went on, he was older. Even though he was a young player, he was older than most of his teammates. And as time has gone on, he's just taken on more and more. He started to have great success with the Canadian national team. He took a leadership role with that. I think that when he really started to emerge was that World Cup with Canada when they got bronze. And then he just emerged even further from there. Last year's lesson during the playoffs, and certainly in the second round loss to Dallas, was that he couldn't do it by himself. So he's been very intentional about stepping back when necessary and letting other people grow.
Cliff Brunt with us here. Cliff, it has been a while, but I remember sitting next to you a time or two in a press box here in Indianapolis. So great to hear your voice, and you were always super friendly to me, so no surprise James shares those same sentiments. Again, Cliff covers the state of Oklahoma for the AP. What Thunder player, role player-wise? So let's eliminate maybe the big three, certainly J-Will or J-Dub, I should say, and SGA. What role Thunder player has impressed you the most through the first 5 games?
Well, I think it's safe to say it's Lou Dort. And although you've got to also throw in Alex Caruso. So both of those guys have been great. I think Dort is actually a little bit overlooked because how good his defense is expected at this point. But Caruso's been knocking it down. Caruso's been so important because he brings that veteran leadership. He's a former champion. He showed the team his ring, and everybody respects that. When somebody comes in with a ring, what's your choice? You just look at it and say, okay, what you got to say? Let's do it. You know what I'm saying? But Lou Dort also, if you look at his 3-point shooting in the finals, I believe it's something like 14 for 24 or something like that, which is ridiculous. So to have an elite 3-and-D guy do that. And Dort wasn't always a great shooter. He's really, really, really worked on it from his days as a G League guy. So I would say those two have stood out the most. There have been others. Certainly Wiggins has had some moments. But I think those two guys have stood out.
Cliff, one of the perceived advantages for this Pacers team going into the finals was having a guy like Rick Carlisle, who's been there before as a player and as a coach, but obviously Mark Daigneault isn't trying to concede anything. So how have you seen him handle this stage of the sport when it comes to adjustments, bouncing back from losses and things like that?
He is an introspective guy. He really soaks up and learns from everything that he encounters, and he comes back better. And his team is just like that. The team is an extension of him. So as he grows, the team grows, and vice versa. he knew that this challenge would be different. Even in the regular season, when I asked him about Rick Carlisle, he had nothing but the highest praise for him. So I think he knew that this coaching matchup would be different. Many, many times the Thunder just overwhelm teams with their adjustments at halftime and just run away from them. But Carlisle's in-game adjustments are excellent as well, and on the level, if not higher than Daigneault. So that chess match has been outstanding, as you can see Mark Daigneault growing during the finals, and his team growing during the finals. The second youngest team to ever reach the finals, the second youngest team, I believe, in the NBA, and yet you see the maturity increase, and it starts with the coach.
Cliff, now be honest, you Associated Press, you got to have your story pretty much ready at the gun after the game. So did you have two versions going when T.J. McConnell went off in that third quarter? Did you start thinking, oh, man, here comes game one all over again?
I was I was focusing on, we got two guys there.
Oh, nice,
so
nice.
I was focusing, so I was focusing a little bit more on, okay, what's my angle going to be? It's looking pretty strongly like it's going to be Williams and Haliburton. So, as the two main aspects of that game.
Yeah.
Williams going crazy, Haliburton struggling and injured. So what's the next piece? And so that's where I came up with the Shea angle of being a guy who dropped dimes and played more like a traditional point guard in that game. And I believe, in the pregame, somebody asked about Shea. They said, well, playoff games are oftentimes won with passing. The Thunder had said that last year. And then they hadn't had very many assists in the finals, and Shea didn't have any in the previous game. And Mark Daigneault looked completely unbothered, and he was just like, Shea can do, well, what he needs to do to get these wins. And then he goes out and goes 31 and 10 and 4 blocks. So, Shea can do whatever is needed.
Cliff, will you be working Sunday night?
Oh.
Will there be a Game 7 is what I'm asking?
Well, if you look at everything, if you look at the numbers, you look at the way the series has gone, you look at the fact that Haliburton is, going to have an MRI and is not 100%, even regardless of what the MRI says, he's not 100%. And then you look at McConnell, right? You look at McConnell in the way he had that great burst, but then he was exhausted. He couldn't continue because he doesn't play that many minutes. He's not used to it. That's going to make it very, very tough for Indiana to win against the Oklahoma City team that's unlocked something. Here's the thing that I think stands out and why it's not likely to come back here. The Thunder have unlocked something. This has been a series of adjustments, right? One team finds something, the next team finds something, and they keep adjusting, and it stayed even until the Thunder unlocked Jalen Williams. That is the adjustment that has yet to be solved. And unless they figure something out there, the season's over.
Oof, that doesn't sound too great here. Look, I'm looking at Kevin right now. He's taking a deep breath.
It's a great point, but it's not a good point if you're a Pacer fan.
Well, right. Go ahead, Cliff. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I was just saying, I guess my last thought on him is he's just emerged from the season. He's only 24 years old. You know what I'm saying? He's only going to get better. So this is just what you guys are seeing in Indiana, and I know you can respect it and appreciate it because I lived in Indiana and I covered the Pacers for years. I know you all appreciate great ball. I know you don't appreciate Shea getting to the line as much as he does, but I know that Indiana fans are some of the best when it comes to appreciating great basketball, and I know that's what you're seeing with Oklahoma City, a team that's gritty and tough and plays defense and does things the right way, respects their coach, plays as a team, has fun with it. And I know that fan base, even though you don't like what's happening, can appreciate the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Well, appreciate you, Cliff, for coming on. And, man, you cover both teams in for years now in some capacity. So congrats on, just all the success and continued success, my friend.
Thank you very much for having me on, man. I told you I was good with it.
Hey, you're right. Have a good one, man.
Thanks, Cliff.
That's Cliff Brunt, again, from the Associated Press.
He's one of the nicer dudes I've ever come across.
Yeah, no, seriously. And I'll be honest. I remember going to OKC for the first time, covering the Pacers when they were, a bad team, and getting my first shot to cover a pro team. And I'm in the OKC, food media room. Didn't know anybody, and he tells me pull up a chair. Sat next to him. We've been pretty tight ever since. So I appreciate that. And that was 4 years ago at this point. So it's fun. It's fun to come full circle that way.
2 scary answers he gave. The one right there at the end, they have unlocked Jalen Williams.
Yeah, they have.
And he is spot on that. Guys, I thought his answer on who the best role player has been is scary. I figured he would say Caruso. He says Dort. If he wouldn't have said Caruso, I thought he would have said Aaron Wiggins. Dort is kind of the overlooked guy in this series.
Yeah.
I mean, he really is. And yes, he has shot it well, but, again, his defense has just been out of this world. So those are the answers the Pacers will try and crack inside of their building coming up tomorrow night. We'll do it one final time here on a Wednesday morning.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Now, is this... I get them mixed up, Mark.
Don't do it, Kevin. This is their most popular song.
Rolling.
Limp Bizkit. Yes. Their probably most popular song.
I was going to say, you're going to hurt Mark's heart right there.
I know. I was a little nervous. I felt semi-confident, but I was a little nervous before I went with it.
Mark, you had a kick out of this. We were at Colts veteran minicamp wrapping up, and Matt Taylor, Maytay, voice of the Colts, he looks at me and said, James, who's playing right now? It was some Jim Irsay playlist, and I was like, I have no earthly idea.
You would have gone 0 for 12 during that practice.
Yeah, like I would have been shooting 0% from the field.
Well, I did play Papa Roach earlier, and that's usually who you get tripped up with is
Right.
Papa Roach and Limp Bizkit.
Right.
But Limp Bizkit, that's their most popular song. I saw them in concert. That song played, and I don't think my feet touched the ground for 4.5 minutes because I was being carried by everyone else lifting up.
Pretty electric.
It
We
was
talked
wild.
a lot about, the melee, the tempers flaring last night inside a Gamebridge Fieldhouse.
Was that beef that we saw last night? Korean beef?
Korean beef, exactly. How about the basketball game itself? Keys to the game brought to you by the Hubler Automotive Group. Check out your next car at drivehubler.com, Indiana's giant automotive group. Basketball-wise, James, I thought after the first quarter, the Fever were in full control. And, it's no real surprise Connecticut's bad and the Fever have Caitlin Clark back, but just the potency of what they have, and Caitlin hit a couple deep ones last night, but it just allows, I think, Natasha Howard to get back in a little bit more of a complimentary role. You aren't asking too much of Kelsey Mitchell. She can be the scoring guard that she is, but not have to carry, a little bit more of the ball handling motive for them. I thought Lexi Hall was very good in the first half as well. So I think right now you look at the WNBA, it's New York, it's Minnesota. And right now, if I had to make a bet, I'd say the third best team's the Fever, even though their record might not indicate it.
Yeah, but it's similar to how the Pacers were to start the year, the injuries, but it's like once they got all their guys, and in this case, once they got all their women, on paper, they're one of the best teams. And I think Caitlin just gives you a chance. Not saying they have the best chance to go out there and win a championship or anything like that, but as you can see, she's back in the lineup. They won a few games. Now they're in the Cup final. And I believe they'll play a Minnesota Lynx on July 1st. In Minnesota, so that's another challenge for them because the Lynx obviously are a really, really good team, and they have an MVP candidate of their own in Afisi Collier, who I believe got injured last night. So I'll keep an update on that.
Our Jiffy Lube stat of the day, Scotty throws a lot of NHL stats at us here. I don't know if the Pacers Thunder stat, he throws one in here as a bonus stat is, I don't know, it seems a tad obscure. But nonetheless, teams with a chance to clinch the finals on the road. It's happened 80 times. There's been 80 opportunities for the road team to clinch an NBA Finals game. How many times do you think out of the 80 the road team has clinched that game? Out of 80 games in finals history.
32.
This is NBA?
Yes. James Boyd guessing 32. Out of 80, Mark Dykton, you go
Maybe
where?
lower than that.
I'll say 39.
Ooh, so you're saying almost half.
Let's just split the difference on that. Pretty close to it. 35.
Yeah,
35
right
and 45, the road team. It is.
I'm surprised by that.
Psyche-wise, I don't know if you guys feel this way, and I think the Haliburton injury, sadly, is impacting this.
Yeah.
But if you could put the Haliburton injury to the side, it is amazing how, Pacer fans in general, probably the team, feels some of this of oh my gosh, desperation mode. We've said you scratch and claw to get to Game 7. You do anything. You'll put Boomer in the game for 5 minutes if that means you're going to get to Game 7. And for OKC, it's wait a minute, is this house money? But if for some reason that final buzzer sounds tomorrow night and the Pacers win, it takes a 180. You flipped it upside down. Now the Thunder have the piano on the back of their shoulders.
Yep.
And the Pacers almost feel like they're playing with house money in Game 7. It's amazing how one game could change it all.
And that's what you're playing for. One chance, play one more game. And I'm curious to see what happens later today, the MRI, the results. Tyrese Haliburton, is he in, is he out? But beyond that, how do the other players respond to just being back in their home environment? Because like I said, to me, the great equalizer would be the three-point shooting. You're back at home. Can you get hot from three? And does someone like Benedict Mathurin make a couple threes? Did Aaron Nesmith have a big night from three? Because that, to me, can certainly give you a chance to escape with a win.
Mark, I know we're up against it, but real quickly, this was Rick Carlisle with us earlier on the Tyrese Haliburton update.
He is going to be carefully evaluated over the next 36 hours, and will likely be listed as questionable on the injury report, and probably will be a game-time decision for Game 6.
They are back to practice. Sounds like a walkthrough here coming up shortly, so we'll get further updates with Jake